I was just thinking about how you know how when I forget what the experiment is called, but basically the behavior of a thing changes while it's being observed, right? I was thinking
Mm.
about how I was having a feeling of like I'm a little disappointed that we're recording this, but at the same point, super excited to share whatever comes out of this in the same respect.
Yeah,
Really
yeah,
in the same spirit of the first conversation, right? Because I've had such a unique experience doing what I do, and I'm sure you have as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
for us to have gone down our own respective paths and to have, let's say, different tools or disciplines or ways of going about it, and also very similar ones as well. I'm just,
hmm
again, like you said, just super excited to see what comes out of this, because our
yeah,
intentions
man.
were very similar. We saw the writing on the wall and we knew the importance of financial freedom for ourselves and really the collapse of our homeland, our country, right? So quite a ride.
Yeah, and it was beautiful to be able to connect with you so last minute last time. And by I think 50% through, we were like, oh, we should have recorded that. It's like we had that same energy of like it was really in sync and in harmony. And I agree, man. It's like when you're serving your purpose and when you're honorable and you're intentional in what it is that you're doing and the vision that you have aligns with harmony for everyone else, whoever gravitates towards you, then that means the leadership is also gravitating towards each other. And I think one thing that we spoke about last time as well is how in our field, which crosses many different concepts and, avenues of esoterica, there is still a lot of ego there sometimes. And it comes with the whole thing of making predictions or who's
Yeah,
right or wrong. And so when me and you got together, it was this instantaneous, like, we're okay with it as it is.
yeah.
And it's just about the collaboration.
That's how
That's
I
that's
knew.
really what it is.
That's honestly how I knew you were a real one, a real rare human being, because many would have had the ego of, well, I need to be better than this guy or that guy or whatever.
Yeah.
You came to me basically saying your prediction for the month was not quite where you expected it to be. And there were some details that you'd observed from someone who shared my video with you that were interesting.
Yeah.
So, from the spirit of that, that's someone whose intention is to get to the bag, to get to the result,
Yeah.
not just to
Yeah,
puff their head
exactly.
up. It's like, no, you're really in the weeds trying to make accurate predictions. And so if you run into something that can help you get there, your approach was, well, let me find that out. Let me see if this is really
Exactly.
help me or not on my genuine path of financial freedom and helping, the people that you teach and educate. A lot of people would
A
not,
hundred.
they would have been like, fuck that guy or this or whatever. They would have been, he has
Yeah.
problems because of this or whatever. But now we're in a position of we're both going to become better as a result of just
It was
chopping
like
it up,
what I
diving.
said to you before. It's like a jam band. Like I'm playing the
Exactly.
drums, you're playing the
Yeah,
bass. Like
man.
we need each other. Like we need
Mhm.
each other. And that's the beauty of this symphony. And I think that I say this quite often to my people, the people who gravitate to my art. I
Mhm.
speak to the ears of leadership. I'm not speaking to followers. I'm not
Yeah.
speaking to subscribers. I speak to the ears of leadership. So every single set of ears that's tuning into what I'm sharing, what you're sharing,
Mhm.
we're all in this together. And like, I think one of the biggest missions that I have whilst I'm doing this, don't really want to use this word mission in the sense of, it has this ultimate agenda, but you know what I'm saying? It's to organize people and to have us not focus all of our prana into the right and wrong. Because at the end of the day, like what actually matters?
Right.
So what you said was 100% true. When I shared and this isn't new, it would be newer to your audience, of course, when you share this with them. But I've been projecting a correction in the month of April, specifically the end of April into the month of May. And I've been saying this for a long time, actually, because it comes back to this, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but this analysis for the year of the dragon, which we're currently in, and a
Mhm.
pattern that I found that's been playing itself out since the Great Depression, since the year before the Great Depression officially kicked in. And then I had somebody in my community that's really lovely. I'm not going to say the name just for their own sake, but they love what you're doing. And they're also tuned into my work pretty regularly and for the past couple of years, I believe. And they said, check this out. This guy's sharing his perspective for how things could be going after this particular alignment, this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction and Taurus, which we'll also touch on later. But I said, okay. I opened up the video, I started listening to it, and when I pulled up that video that was sent to me that you talked about your feelings about where we're going next in these markets in Q2, Q3. I wasn't really too concerned with exactly the data you were sharing. It was more the energy you had about the data you were sharing. That's what made me go, okay, let's reach out. I'm open to this. And exactly, like I had no desire to make you agree with my perspective. And when you started sharing your perspective on things, I was excited. See, the one thing about me is I'm excited to get more intel. I'm excited for more alpha.
Yeah,
If it takes my analysis and throws it in the trash can, I don't care. Because at
right.
the end of the day, I'm growing, I'm expanding. Like, I'm not here to be right. You're not here to be right. You're here to embody truth.
That's why I was telling you, honestly, our first conversation was like the best conversation I've had all year because
Well, that's
to
beautiful, bro.
be exposed to different viewpoints that are very much touching on very similar predictions. It's like, what? It's like a whole new world has opened up to me where it's like, Shemitah, what? Calendar this? What? I don't know any of that stuff, right? So this is a
Mhm.
genuine collaborating of the minds where like a jam band, it's like, how are you distorting that guitar? Like, what are you doing with the drums here? It's like
Right.
just two people who are really getting together for truth, for the purposes that you said, really. Really well put. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, brother. And I mean, first things first, I think because this will be shared for both of our audiences, maybe like a little background on what has been going on in your reality for the past, 4 or 5 or so years, like a couple of the years before C19, throughout C19 and where we are today. I feel like that was a very pivotal point for all of us. And it seems to be that me and you have so many so many so much syncretism between us with our stories and everything that's been going on. So I would just love to know a little bit more about you. Like how have things been going for you for the past couple of years?
Well, let's say 2 or 3 years prior, I went down there's this whole archetype of the Dark Night of the Soul. I
Mm,
left my first corporate job and had a whirlwind experience with the psychedelic known as ayahuasca. This was
mm,
2017. And it gave me a great viewpoint at a lot of things I just wasn't looking at, right? The things that accumulate in the shadow when you just don't look at those things. And it brought back to me how far I'd gotten away from really, that inner voice of how I see things, which totally in tune with that now, right? But at that point, I
mm.
had realized I'd gotten kind of away from myself. And I was just working just to work and to make, and you have those questions of, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is the point of all this? And at that, during that experience, it really forced me to realize, well, I came upon the realization myself that I felt like I was just being lied to about everything in the world, that it was just all just
Mm.
not quite true, which really allowed me to be open-minded in the sense of, well, then let me go down this rabbit hole of what were the things that I were told not to be good for me or things that I were told to be right that are wrong. And let me see these or vet these out for myself. And so wherever there was a path of genuine curiosity there, then I would explore that. And for me, it really had to do a lot with esotericism and then spirituality. I don't want to name too many names, but I did the retreats, I did the books, all of it, the courses for years,
Mhm.
and just in search of, well, what is enlightenment or what is beyond this pain or suffering or this I was really steeped in self-help stuff at the time as well, too. And so
Right.
one of the nagging questions I had for me throughout my 20s was, when is this change that I know is supposed to happen with me actually gonna
Mhm.
kick in and then flip over? And
Mhm.
so it just felt like I kept searching for something that would unlock that, perhaps externally. Um,
Sure.
Astrology for me was a thing where, and growing up where we grew up, it's like, people that look like me and just us in general, we don't fuck with that shit, man. I mean, Miss Cleo used to be a thing on TV. I don't know if you remember her, right? That was like a fucking joke, right? And so
Sure.
for me to be going down this rabbit hole of exploring new things and also having a understanding of games people play or cons or scams people play, again, just because of where we grew up, right? I
Yeah,
had
exactly. And that's
first.
important that you brought that up. That point right there is huge because it's gonna blend into what I'll share later. But keep going. This is so resonating with me right now, what you're talking about.
So with, we look out for those things. We are skeptics. And I was raised by immigrants
Exactly.
who, for ever since like before I was born, I'm sure I was hearing this in the womb. It's like, you will go to college, you'll get an education. That the whole thing was like being smart was very much like valued. Like in part that the karma of being born into this world is a lot of the energy behind your parents, right? So the
Hmm.
dichotomy of, what they wanted from me and, yeah, they're immigrants, but that versus, being an American, right? And how we experienced 9/11 and seeing how much of the world just was not how it was presented. That attitude being exposed to during this time period where I'm having this deep search of everything and just being open-minded, bringing that attitude and experience to an astrological reading where I'm being told things about myself that couldn't be done by just like a psychic or someone playing games like, and I gave you the example when we were talking of what they call cold reading, where someone can say something like, I bet you are pretty generous to your friends, but sometimes you hold back. Or I bet sometimes you're pretty hard on yourself when it comes to things in life. But I bet sometimes you're pretty lazy and pretty relaxed on yourself sometimes too, which is
Yeah.
every human being
Just
that
vague.
ever existed ever, right?
Right. Yeah, it's
It's
vague.
just it's just vague. But these are things that you can tell somebody and go like, wow, you're really talking about me. And
For
so I
sure.
was pretty privy to that shit. So for me to be seeing things in this astrological arena that will say things about like family members or certain experiences and times in your life, what happened to me was I had just happened to encounter someone who was really good at what they were doing, which I later found out is how every field works. It really is a Pareto distribution.
Yeah.
Every field, you have a small percentage of people who are really good, and then you just have the fucking masses,
Yeah.
which is one thing I'll give you credit for by saying that you speak to leaders. Again, like we're just meeting here. And it feels like we've known each other longer than that, which is weird,
Yeah.
but it's
Either
weird.
way, for the audience, I've only spoken to Sama for two hours maybe total, and it was just one time. There's no, yeah, this is very much still in us getting to know.
Right.
But are we? I think we're remembering like all
I
our
think we
homies.
are
I
too.
think we're all in the process of remembering all
Yeah.
of our people. That's why I always say people too, like my people, because I feel connected a lot more as I've become more open to all of this and have kind of taken my ego and been through the process of healing my ego. I start to see I'm an extension of all of it, right? And every time that it comes to combat me, that it wants to pull out its Mars energy and fight me, I'm like, okay, try, go for it.
Go
Stab
for
me
it.
in the back. I
Mhm.
just turn into liquid mercury. Like, you can't fuck with me anymore. And it's because I've gone through that childhood, that upbringing in that particular, area. And, I don't want to get too specific, but I know you resonate with that. And it makes you sleep with one eye open sometimes. It makes you walk down the street looking over your shoulder.
Healthy
In
paranoia.
my Yeah, and that comes back to the getting into the field of esoterica and a lot of the stuff that comes with Eastern spiritualism. Your intuition flares up very early on and it says, that's
Yeah.
bullshit. That's
Yeah.
bullshit. Like your bullshit detector starts going off.
Mhm.
But you can't deny something that is truly striking a chord with you, right?
Right.
And I suppose that's kind of where it'll, me and you both went through that phase of allowing, right? Okay, it's time to allow. So what
The,
was that first time for you? It was a reading that you had with somebody that was part
yeah.
of that 80-20 that you brought up, the Pareto
Yeah.
principle.
Yeah. And I think the skepticism actually helped because it became a nagging question of how is this possible? And it's kind of led me
Mm,
to this conversation here. It's just a series of questions. And that's what I've later come to learn is questions take you on a path or on a journey. And so me going, how is this working? How could somebody be telling me these things about myself? And then wanting to like debunk it or even just really understand it has led to a process of trial and error of, okay, well, So some of this is broken. Some of this is the result of books going into the Vatican and being burned. Some of this is the result of 2,000 years of human beings playing the game telephone. There are the precession of the equinoxes, so there's a confusion there. And there's a bunch of things that explain why people just aren't really that good at this. But yet there are a few select individuals that are. Well, what's separating them? Which was another question that led me further along the journey. So then it became, oh, okay, well, here's a couple of techniques that work better than these. So I'll just go with these. Why are these working better? Oh, okay. And then
Hmm.
more questions appear, and then years just go by. And then it's like another thing from the area we come from is the sense of like, yes, you can't fuck with me in the sense of don't tell me what to do. And so
Yes.
when I ran into people who were really good astrologers making a bunch of money, their names were on YouTube or on they were Googleable at
Hmm.
that time, 2017, 18. As I got to understand the symbolism and oh, this is kind of like, well, just reading any weather or any seasonal pattern and understanding like, well, we actually use the sun for timing the clock. You were able to
Yeah.
predict back in the Stone Age, like, okay, if the sun's in that direction, it'll probably be down really soon and the bears will come out. So we should probably head back. Like that's predictive astrology right there. It's not, you're not a witch. You just fucking, you learn that
Sure.
shit from your brother getting eaten the other day. Like, oh, the last time the sun was over there, we didn't have that much
Yeah.
time. Right? So the debunking of this stuff was like, oh, this is yet another example of me seeing things differently due to confusion in semantics and language. And I hate to say it, me just being more educated again because of that. That just again,
Right.
we are who we are. We just are who we are.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I didn't have
It's so
it.
interesting because one of the clients that I had very early on through my work, he booked a call and he wanted to just tell me how blown away he was about something that he never thought about, but it was something he was going on in it going on frequently in his life. He was a corrections officer, right? And he said, I found one of your videos talking about how the market likes to dip into full moons and then it likes to rise into new moons. And I thought initially that sounded crazy. Like it made no sense because I have never heard that before. But I
He
showed on
thought
the charts in the video how it's undeniable. But he said that we are well aware that this is the most chaos we have at my job is during full moons. And he even brought up one time there was an eclipse that happened. And he said it was like it got really out of hand, really, really, really out of hand. And they said it's undeniable. You know, I decided to reach out to you. And he was talking about how he made a couple trades off of this as well. Like he was just swing trading the moon cycles from the video shared. This was a while ago too, but it was the first time where I had somebody reach out who had skepticism. But then in their own life, they were able to piece it together just like you did a second ago. Like it had no woo-woo to it when we needed
right.
to know when is the winter coming, right? It was just
Right.
a necessity. Like
It
it's
was
a
a necessity.
necessity to know,
Yeah.
right? But now with these technological luxuries and all the stuff that we're dealing with today, we're so disconnected from nature. We're also disconnected from the spiritual sense in many different aspects. I don't want to sound judgmental, but it seems that man is currently spiritually bankrupt, even whilst having a lot of material wealth. We see this all the time, even in multimillionaires and billionaires. So, really the people that we're speaking to here when we're coming out and sharing this art is those that have always been in tune with this type of thing. And it's important that they show up with the skepticism, just as me and you have. And
Right.
and the one thing that you brought up that's so key here is I think regardless of what upbringing you've had, if you're tuning into this, one thing you probably did experience quite recently was during those 2 years of this lockdown, and you had people telling you how to behave, right? What to put on your face, and that right there, you had a moment where your intuition flared up and it said, I don't think I should be doing that. Like I actually will not do that. And
Mhm.
that was a really fascinating time period because you went from perhaps once respecting this whole group of individuals as specialists and as people who have your best interest, and then now you don't feel that way anymore and it made you more open to other things. And this is why, if anyone out there believes that the quote unquote New World Order is like evil and awful and all of this stuff, but you have to remind yourself that it actually helped you mine and extract more consciousness like 9/11, it actually allowed you to tap into this information field in a way that you would have never been able to if it wasn't for that event. And I tested this one time very early on in my channel when, and you should do this as well. It's always fun. You ask your audience, what was like your red pill moment? What was the moment where you felt like, oh, but this isn't the reality that I was told it was, just like you were explaining earlier. And I
Yeah.
swear about 80 to 90% of the submissions in the comment section, everyone said 9/11. This was people that were 60, 70 in some instances. So they've had this whole life and then recently have had this event. And then that triggered this apocalypse by the true definition and uncovering, right?
Yeah.
And
It
we
goes
at the
to the
same
point
time,
that probably a thread here of remembering, right? And maybe in
that's
more because
absolutely.
why is that all you're talking about people, I'm assuming much older than us who again was this a recent poll? Like they've lived through 2020 and then you polled them
Yeah.
or all right,
Yeah. It
so
was after
they're not
2020.
even counting that. I wouldn't count that. I wouldn't count 2020 either. I would count for me 2020 was like a splash of water in the face. Like, did you motherfucker? Like, oh, you forgot. Like, wake up. Like, that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
It was a reminder of what I had learned in 9/11. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting that you say that.
Yeah. And I call it wiping away the cosmic amnesia, which I don't know who I heard that
I
from.
love that. Yeah, you
Sorry, I
said that
can't give
last time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I can't give credit to the person, but I heard this one time and it really struck with me, and it's something that I've been keeping in mind with any clients that I have that are going through this kind of process. And yeah, it's beautiful that we're all sort of waking up to the knowing that we've always known. There's no new data that's actually entering your attention. It's always been there. And if anything, man is struggling with a hoarding of data. We have hoarded too
Too
much
much.
information.
It's too much.
Information is not necessarily what you should desire. Information means you are in formation. You are like soldiers walking in a line. Those sheep go to the slaughter. You don't need the information. You need wisdom. You need applied knowledge. You need something that has life force, not just something sitting around collecting dust. And there's so many brilliant people that have packed their skulls with so much data, so much information, and they have this brain fog, if you will, because there's no purpose behind the data. There's no driving force. And for you, it aligned in this way where you found this astrology thing and then you were able to transmute this data, this information. You're able to transmute that thing into something that now is helping with the awakening process of everyone else. The remembering process is probably the better word.
Is where is the information coming from? What is it rooted in? Is it chock full of source rooted in something real? Or is it an empty chase designed to put you in formation to chase something that is empty because that information was designed to make you do that? And so, so much information out there is actually weaponized to waste your time, to take from you
Yes.
because it is devoid of that source, of that truth. And so when people run into, let's say, others who are doing what you do, or others who are doing what I do, if it's not rooted in that, then it's empty. And they run into the same problem. It doesn't matter what the label is, whether it's gematria, astrology, whatever. It's where is it coming
Yeah.
from? And so this is the other side of the skepticism coin is this ever increasing sea of intellectuals that don't know a fucking thing. Is this is how you get a world where we get presented models and algorithms that predict, I'll say it, climate this, that, or whatever, or that the case
Hmm.
rate will be this and these many people will die. Those numbers are always wrong because they're not rooted from that place of truth. And so the other side of the skepticism is we, like you said it on the head, is the disconnection from nature. And so it becomes just a lot of heady bullshit that's not really real.
Yeah. And where did you find yourself maybe becoming quicker with those reminders? Because I feel like that's the thing that we're all going through right now is like we know the truth, we know the answers, but it's the ones who are excellent or the ones who thrive or the ones that become successful are just quicker to realize and self-correct. And then they don't have as much guilt and shame in that process, right? Whilst you're in this beginner phase, whatever that means, whilst you're there, you have a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and you're almost trying to avoid the being wrong thing or the miscalculating. You're not willing to self-correct. There's too much ego there. There's too much, artificial loss. So like, do you have maybe some things to add to that with what did it take for you to start going, okay, this wasn't the way that I thought, or this wasn't the way that I thought, but instead of feeling down about it, any guilt or shame, you were just in expansion mode, like self-correct mode.
Staying on the path of honest questions of wanting to understand things I wanted to understand. I know that sounds vague, but it led me to, let's say, a certain person or teacher or event or an experience. And many oftentimes there would be a sense of maybe this is the thing that will change or fix everything, and there'll be a sense of disillusionment. And those moments, I'm sure we've all had them. I've come to realize that I am all that I need, which is
Mhm.
paradoxical because we're talking about how we need each other. And none of this conversation would be possible without a myriad of other human beings, from the electric to the camera, all of that, right? So
Yeah.
we have a paradoxical experience here. So this is why we vibe. We understand what we're talking about here is artistic, and there's limitations to language. So for those who aren't familiar with how I view these things or how I'm expressing myself, let me just say that as a disclaimer. But yeah, these experiences of trying to externalize to any form of a external saving grace, be it money or a guru or mommy daddy figure, whatever. Um, through through exploring the questions I had with astrology for myself and wanting to share what I've learned and helping people with their own explorations, I've only very recently, I would say, gotten not just good at a technical level at what I do, but almost, dare I say, even stepping into levels of mastery when it comes to working one-on-one with people, or even with like how things are even shifting into the charts. Some of it is beyond my control. Some of it is a culmination of we have this intense desire to become financially free because we understand what time it is in the world and all these other things that are affecting people like me and you. And the timing of it now is just, it just so happens to be that my understanding is reaching different layers or levels. This happens to anybody who's deep in anything. Eventually, you start to become a veteran at the game, right? Like we were talking about professional athletes, or they might come into the league at 20 or 21, but a lot of them will win their rings at, like, the maturity of Mars actually around 27 or 28, because you start to see things a couple of times, and that passion of really
Yeah.
wanting to figure the thing out, eventually you start figuring the thing out, right? And so some of it is timing,
Yeah.
but understanding how much through our problems, our answers are within that problem. So for each human being, it's more about helping them see within themselves, and me being more of a reflective mirror and working within ways that I have come to learn how to do to help them have understanding with where they're at and why they're there, which I have found to be the fastest way to really then move and clear things out. If you don't understand why you're doing a thing, you'll just repeat it. If you understand why you're doing something, you might repeat it, but it's conscious now. And then you eventually get to a point where, like, I'm just being fucking dumb here, and you just stop, rather than somebody telling you something that may have worked for them, but they're a different person. And so with our work, or with my work, I'm able to see we really are unique in our own way. And there is a unique path for each and every single human being here. And so part of my personal frustration is how, I'll use the word, homogenized um, society is really designed
Right. Yeah.
us for us to be, this whole carbon copy thing. And it's yet again the exact opposite of how it should be. So for me, I would say I'm just being me, and I'm allowing, and I don't really know how to explain it much more than that. Is I've had and I still do have an intense desire to not be told what to do by people who shouldn't and have no right to tell me that. And
Yeah.
I could go in, we could go into a whole legal rant as Americans as to why that is, but on a spiritual level,
Yeah.
that's really where the battle is. And I was trying to say this earlier, why I have to give you credit is you are specifically speaking to that, and you've done so from a place of what it sounds like optimism. I'm doing it from a place of resignation. It's like I've like
Oh man.
just like given up. It's like
No, I don't think, but like brother, like I just had
not
this
giving
happen to
up
me
in not
recent.
let me explain. Not giving up in a negative way, but giving up in the sense like what I felt like I saw during 2020 bothered me in the sense that I thought more people would respond differently.
Yeah, yeah,
And then that hit me as no wonder these so-called elites, I don't call them elites, I always say so-called.
yeah, yeah.
It taught me viscerally why they look at us so like we're dumb. It was
Sure.
it was like, oh, no wonder. Like this is we really think standing 6 feet apart from the world's deadliest. How are people allowing this cognitive dissonance? It
Yeah,
really was like, and then the boxes of the masks say these do not protect you from it's on the box, and then you want to get into an argument about how it will protect you. Like, just read the box. The manufacturer
yeah,
told, like, it was just like, so this is why they look at us and just do the things that they do blatantly. And here we are in 24. What's different?
yeah. Well,
So
I've noticed the patterns. It's the same
but this
pattern
is
when
why
you
I have
go
to
to the
give you
Louvre.
credit. And this is why I'm saying I'm doing this from resignation. It's the same shade. It's the same polarity of the same thing, bro. We're just being here.
Hmm.
It's like I just need
Yeah,
to say what I need to say because if you guys are really that fucking dumb, and if people are just gonna do what these elites lay out for them anyway, like I'm gonna go into a rant about crypto probably here in a little bit, and I'm just gonna have to until the wheels fall off. It's like we're just chasing riches.
yeah,
Blockchain could free us, and we just want Bitcoin to go to $1 million. It's like you fucking idiots. A world with $1 million Bitcoin is what? $100 gas? Then what?
yeah. Right. People don't understand.
Shitty currency. You want 100? What are you gonna do with $1 million Bitcoin? What are you gonna buy? And
Yeah,
so it's
people
like,
don't actually, they don't actually know what it is that they desire. That's
so
really, I think, maybe
they
another
really don't.
another
They really
philosophical
don't.
lane. Yeah, that would be another really fun, philosophical lane to drive down together because I have something coming out soon that I'm gonna release, and it's a whole separate project. I'm not gonna really get too deep into it now for the sake of our conversation, but it's gonna have a module inside of it talking about value and like why I think we're in a value renaissance right now. And things like seeing the NFT market in 2021 were absolute nonsense was, 10 grand for some non-fungible token of that Lindsay Lohan made. Like this is kind of like the biggest scam of scams, but it's cloaked in this. I think in The Big Short, it's the best part of that movie is when Jared Vanette is talking to the Steve uh Carell character. Yeah, and he says, so it's cat shit wrapped in dog shit. And it's like that's exactly what he's explaining about the housing market. That's what's going on here in the tokenization of our realm,
Yeah,
right? We're
yeah,
there. We're pretty much there at the final, we're at the
yeah,
beginning of the end, actually, a statement that you said in one of your recent videos.
yeah.
So, but one of the things I want to jump back to really quick before we go down that lane is you were talking about this experience of 2020 and you were giving me credit for the optimism. And the one thing
Well, for
that
speaking to
I,
leaders, bro, because it's like
yeah,
that's what I mean by optimism. It's it's
yeah,
it's
and
teaching
and
me. It's
where it's,
honestly teaching me because
oh, that's beautiful.
like that's what I'm saying. It's like I it started getting dark for me because of my experience of
Hmm.
like you guys are really just blatant truth in front of you. You won't. You just why? And so okay, well, why? Financial freedom's a big part of it. That's why. So let me
Hmm.
understand crypto and free myself so that again, this really comes down to the ancient expression of you don't bite the hand that feeds you. So if you can feed yourself, which crypto could allow us to do, but again, we're just chasing, right? Back to the whole thing, which again, the value of
Yeah,
the value module and why people need it is what are you chasing? You're in a cage. You
right.
want to be rich in a cage?
Yeah. I mean, it's called blockchain. You're chained to the block. Like it's pretty obvious in the words. But the one thing that I started to exercise is to be as compassionate as I can in not a way that damages my ego or a way that makes me be obedient to the rule makers or the apex predator or whatever you want to call them, but so that I can now tap into the cosmic economy Like, bro, there's a much bigger bank account out there. Like, and anyone who knows me, when I go to a cafe or when I'm in an Uber or whatever, I ask everyone, how's your day going? I try to engage. If I see that there's all these open at the grocery store, you know, where all this self-checkout fucking things are, and like if I see somebody working on the register, I go out of my way to go to the
Yeah,
register. Like I want to, even if whatever it costs me an extra 10 minutes of waiting, I don't give a shit. Like I feel like I need to tap into all of that. And another thing for those that are maybe trying to get into a similar field as me and Sama, where you want to help others, well, you need to be good at dealing with others. And we're in a world right now where nobody wants to fucking deal with anyone. You want groceries, you order the shit to your house. You want food, you order it to your house. You want to get a car ride, you get in the Uber, you don't even talk to the dude. Like, we're living in a world right now where we're avoiding human connection. And we still have the chance right now to have that connection. So, what I started doing, brother, is like, I go into every conversation as if I'm talking to you. I go into it sharing the way that I feel, if it's necessary, of course. And I'm actually surprised most of the time somebody knows about something that's going on. Like I used to give them this like judgment, not them. I know that's again, I'm just being
please
feeling
say it
very
right
vulnerable and I'm feeling very free with you as I noticed you felt with
now.
me.
Yeah.
It's that I, at some times in my journey, especially in 2020 and 2021, I resonate with what you said. During
Mhm.
those years, I went into situations expecting somebody to be like, why aren't you wearing a mask? Why
Mhm.
are you must be a Trump supporter? I'm like, what? How does me not wanting to do that make me that? Right. But I
Right.
had to learn, like, if you want to master this experience in this simulacrum, get ready to have people throwing darts at you. And instead of bitching and complaining and thinking everyone sucks, just be like Neo and start learning how to dodge the fucking darts. So
Yeah.
that's what I've learned. It's seeming like optimism, but really what it is I'm just getting better at changing my colors when the chameleon knows it needs to change its colors. The chameleon
Yeah.
isn't lying
Yeah.
or being deceived. Like it's not about that. Some people have heard me say this. I think Jay-Z said it. He said, know how to be a
That's the
chameleon in a
judgment
room
game.
full of vultures.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
judgment, right?
Like
If a
I'm not being obedient. I'm not
if a cop,
changing my whole care.
like I'm super authentic
Sorry?
with you right now, right? We're being super authentic right now. If a cop were to pull me over and try to give me, like, I would tell him whatever. I'll tell him my son's sick,
Mhm.
this, that. I don't even have a son. I'd make something up. Why should I give them money to go bomb children, right? Like, it's all right. Like this whole shouldn't thing, like it's about what the experience is in the moment, right? And so the shape-shifting thing, I think it's in part where we grew up to. That has been that I learned that from there. But it's not, it's exactly how you're saying it. And we
Yeah.
judge
It's
ourselves for
not
things.
about being
It's not about,
inauthentic. It's not about
yeah.
not being genuine. It's about
Mhm.
knowing that, and this is where we can go a little bit deeper.
You're running
It's
into
to
something
know,
and you're merging with it, and there's either a game you're playing or you can relinquish with that thing, right? Like the
right.
conflict scenario, that's a game me and a comp are playing. And because of
Well,
my
the
own values, I choose in that scenario, I'm going to approach it differently, right?
right.
That's what we're talking
I'm
about.
just learning how to use my energy
Yes.
wisely. Like I understand that I have like a pranic bank account and there's only so much prana that that I could give out each day to bullshit. Like I'm willing to invest my prana in this moment right now because when I share it with you, I receive. Like it's this exchange, it's a dance, right? It's when you listen to beautiful music and you're moving to it and there's this exchange. But I'm not going to be in this contest against somebody else and exhaust myself just to prove a point or to say
Right.
that I won or to be right. At the end of the day, competition's for losers.
It really
Like
is.
when you become a man, when you really man up, you start to see like let people think that this world is a game. Let them think that it's this set of, whatever calculation they hold value to, right? Again, coming back to this $1 million Bitcoin thing or the wherever you're at with your value system, if that's what matters to you, then keep it there, And I've learned to do
Right.
that with myself.
Yeah, I'm not
I
saying
know
Bitcoin.
very
Right?
quickly,
That's not what I'm saying.
right.
Right.
But also, if you're 100% in fiat, maybe go buy some Bitcoin, right? Like it's
Exactly.
all in accordance with what value system do you have? Like right now, should we be spending so much money on digital yachts in the metaverse? I'm not sure. Maybe try getting a real yacht first. That might you could actually use the fucking thing.
Right.
Like money right now, even at the highest levels, is being thrown in the toilet. And the global money system that we have, which is becoming more globalist, it knows that. It knows that we're willing to pay 300% more for milk than we did 5 years. Like as long as you want to keep putting money in the casino, it says I'll keep my mouth wide open, you
Yep.
know, keep shoving it all in. It's an obese, overfed pig. And the crazy thing about it is they can keep loading it up forever, infinitely, because it doesn't even have a ledger that's provable. Like it's fairy dust. And the same thing goes for crypto. The same thing goes for whatever CBDC that'll come out. The same thing goes for a lot, right? It's an infinite vacuum. And I think people are going through this value apocalypse right now. And people such as ourselves, we're just trying to teach people how to navigate those waters, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's not about having the best fucking boat. It's about knowing when to deal with the winds getting a little rough, how to deal with some high tide. And too many people right now are chasing this whole get rich thing and they're avoiding the spiritual wealth. They're avoiding the mental well-being. So they're racking up all these G's in their bank account, but they're fucking depressed and they have anxiety and they're worried about next week and they have no ability to let go of some trauma of the past. They have a lot of bitterness inside of them. So
That's
there's
in part
so
what
much
happened.
that goes into this.
That's in part what happened to
Is
me.
it?
So I saw the writing on the wall with 2020. I leave the corporate world. I'm researching all this stuff about what happens when money is printed because the CARES Act happened. I'm like, something's fucking going on here. They're fucking with us. This is BS. This is going to lead to some kind of collapse. So I go down this whole economic rabbit hole again, which I've done in the past when I was around that 9/11 thing, actually. So here I am again, and I find out about Bitcoin and how it's basically anti-inflationary. And I leave the corporate world to commit myself to, again, this also goes back to when I said we don't like being told what to do or we like to resist the challenge. I was talking with a few of the best astrologers I could find at the time, and they all said financial astrology was impossible. It's too difficult. So that was the turn on for me after the money printing and then learning about crypto. I leave the corporate world. I just throw myself into with some astrological alignments in my chart. I timed it on purpose. I said, I'm committing to this. I'm going to figure this out. There will be a bull run. I can do this. And I need to become financially free because if they're telling people to wear masks and it's obviously BS, then what else is coming? So that healthy paranoia that I was telling you about, it was a just 10 out of 10 on the scale. And it really, again, to my point where I always talk about true desire is my true desire was not to have to be told what to do by people that don't have that right. And the way things lined up for me now, as I'm explaining it, it all pointed towards crypto and that particular bull run due to my upbringing, my chart, me being me. That's just how that's how this conversation is happening. And
Mhm.
I was correct, right? I experienced DeFi summer and Binance liquidations and all that shit. And then PayPal announced they were getting into it, then MicroStrategy, and then we got 14K, and then we broke through. And my portfolio was in a place that I'd never seen that much money. And so
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, my money problems seem to be taken care of, I guess, but these fucking assholes are still, now it's not just a mask, it's a whole bunch of other things. I can't travel, I can't do this, I can't do that. What passport should I
Yeah.
buy? Do I need to leave and so it's not like I was happy. It was just
Yeah.
one, so that's in part why I ended up with the channel and making the videos very similar to yourself because it's not just about me. And it's not just about making money. Like I said earlier, what's the point about being rich in a cage, especially when and even from a selfish perspective, whether it's loved ones, friends, family,
Yeah.
they're walking into a trap. It's like lighting a cigarette or having a drink when people are around you dying. It's like, how do you enjoy yourself? I guess some people
Yeah.
can.
Well, to numb, and money is being used by
To
a lot
numb.
of wealthy
It's to
people
numb.
as a numbing. Yeah, exactly. And yeah,
And can
money
you
only
blame
cures
people
money
for numbing
problems.
themselves? When you have an open heart in this world and you can really see what's happening,
Sure. Yeah. It's happened to me a lot actually. A lot of I had a couple of moments in my journey where I got really shook, you know, like when you start learning about the organ harvesting and like all the shit going on with human trafficking, like that's deep, you know, that's heavy.
and I'm
So when
sure
I
you had
started
to have
learning
had
about,
moments for yourself. Sorry to cut you off, where you're like, "Do I really want to be talking about these people?" And smart you don't have your face up. My dumbass does, but it's like these are murderers of a high level. This is professional mafia. We just look at them as
well,
government.
what I believe at that level is like I feel protected. Like I really do feel protected. I've gotten into so much stuff over the last 5 years where I'm like, it only goes this way because I don't burden
Yeah,
myself with worrying about it. Like
yeah,
everything is happening exactly how it needs to happen. And every time it doesn't, it's because I try to overplan something that's not from
yeah,
the heart and it's
yeah.
solely from my mind being analytical. And that's where I make my mistakes, right? But
Yes,
I like
that
to
is
say
like
that my mistakes are my greatest choices because at least I get to learn from those. But getting back to this, you know, yeah, this moment we're in right now where we have a heavy heart and we want to be of use to all of those that have potential and that also do are going through something. But it's like you can't be the daddy to everyone. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that I checked in with my ego when I started this channel was I said to myself, like, I don't want to have followers. I don't want to be people's daddy because that's what a lot of people are doing, like the whole Andrew Tate thing. And I'm not trying to diminish what he is or what his work is. I don't know who he is, and I try to not talk badly about another man if I'm not speaking with him. But he's just a bunch of people's daddies, and the hardcore supporters of that dude don't even know that that's what they're doing. That father figure archetype is missing in their life. So for me, I went in very the early stages of the genesis of my art. And I said, I'm speaking to the ears of leadership because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to have the fame. I don't want the celebrity shit. Like, I am fine doing what I do. I'm a musician, and honestly, that's what brings me the most purpose is when I'm making music. This whole thing that we're getting into with technical analysis and Gematria
yeah,
astrology and numerology applications to the markets, this was very much like you, where it's, and I'm not saying this to flex, but it's a gift that I have. It's something that came out of nowhere. It was natural. I have a very good memory and I'm very good at recognizing patterns. That's all I have to do. It's like being a weatherman. All I have to do is know how to recognize patterns, remove my emotion completely
yeah.
out of it because that doesn't serve me here
That
and
was
then
the
just
hardest part,
trade the
I'm sure,
fucking
right?
market that comes to me.
That was the
The
hardest part,
hardest
right?
part,
Just
you
getting
know
out of
what the
your own way.
hardest part, yes, in one sense, but the hardest part has developed. The hurdle that I have been learning how to master today is how to not get offended or upset if hate comes my way, even if I know this person is hurting a lot. You know, that's me being vulnerable. And this is something that I work with a lot of clients in. It's like, if you really want to be a leader, you have to be aware that there's going to be people that hate you, even if you're helping them, even if you're making them money. Like
Yeah,
you could be in a position where you're actually elevating somebody's livelihood, but they still want to stab you in the back. So I've been through it all, man. Because when you do crypto specifically and finance specifically, I don't know what your experience is like thus far, but like I've gotten death threats. I've had people at the end of the 2021 bull run say that they wanted to come kill my whole family, like because of something on a YouTube video. And I'm like, it took me a moment to separate from like what am I doing? What's the consequence of what I'm doing? I needed to check in. Like, so every move that I've made and the way that I'm dancing through this whole, you know, this whole show is very much on my terms. I have a lot of people that wish I would show myself and be all open like that. And I'm like, bro, this is me doing me my way. Like I needed to
right.
do it this way.
Yeah,
And every time that I listen to my truth and I listen to my intuition, it sets me up for more harmony and more synchronicity in the realm. I don't even give like the money thing is just one part of it. But then over time, I started to learn like there's different problems that need to be addressed here. And humans are avoiding that. And they
right.
are solely chasing the money. And that's a big part that people come to my channel because they want the crypto stuff.
Mm.
So many people, they make it to a live stream and they're like, he's not talking about crypto. What the hell's going on? I want him to talk about the charts. And
Yeah.
I've decided, no,
Mm.
I need to make more art surrounding my vision and my philosophy, and the garnish will be the crypto stuff. That's the kind of imprint that I want to leave in this universe. Because I, for one, and maybe we could get into this now, I, for one, do not see freedom or positivity coming from the crypto revolution. I see more enslavement. I
Failing.
see
We're failing.
more.
Yeah, I agree. We're failing.
I see.
There's an
I see
opportunity for
us
it, but we are
absolutely.
chasing the wrong thing.
Yeah, like all things, the hammer could be used to build a beautiful palace, or it could be used to crack somebody's skull open. You know,
Mhm.
like I think we're using the hammer to crack our own heads open and we don't even realize it. And that's why the
We're
leverage trading
helping
and
them.
all of this, it's
We're fucking helping them build that
right.
hammer that's gonna crack our head open. We're saying, oh, here's our sensitive spot. If you hit it just right here, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, even with the leverage trading, like, I that's a prime example. It's like that is what really drives a lot of this choppy price action. Like, in part, like I gave the prediction, some people were saying, I get the threats to you, man, or you're a scammer, or you're wrong, or this didn't happen, or how could that possibly
Sure.
be? We're at all-time high. So a bunch of retails coming in, basically looking to leverage long. So it's you guys that are holding up the movement of things moving forward. These market makers will rinse you guys until they're done rinsing you guys. Then we'll move
Yeah.
up. Keep 100xing at 70K and we'll stay here and
Yeah.
we'll keep chopping
Yeah.
sideways. Like I said in my fucking video, it's you guys. It's not like it's not me. And so the death threats, they're gonna come again, bro, because
Yeah.
people get euphoric like that at the end of bull runs. I'm going to get the threats too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's something that like, and I didn't want to put too much energy into that. And it's not frequent. It's only happened a couple times, but it's reminding me that I made a choice. I
Mhm.
made a choice to share this skill and to be vulnerable and risk,
Yeah.
this art with the world. And that's really to ring it all back into a place that has utility. That's where it is. Like I actually felt I had like a Kanye moment about it because I felt good knowing that it made somebody feel something, even though it wasn't a positive feeling for them,
Mhm.
because I knew at the end of the day, this was my best. This was the fucking best I could give you. And if it's making you emotional and want to harm me, then that's on you, homie. But at the end of the day, now that I'm reflecting back at it, I'm like, yo, that's some dragon energy shit. Like that's actually showing that it's unique,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
when one man is getting blamed and everyone else is fine, it's because that one man was saying something different. And that's really all that this is to me. It's art. It's like, how do I create something that makes people feel something, right? No matter what that spectrum of feeling is, because we live in a world that's just stuck on numb mode.
Yeah.
It's infinite numb mode. And people think that they're going to be able to undo this numbness by getting, by XRP going to the moon or whatever. And it's not the way that this works. It's like a lot of the time, if you aren't prepared and stoic today, then when the market appreciates and it goes up 1,000, 2,000%, you're not going to know how to exit that. You will be exit liquidity. Like in this whole process, as you said before, the market maker knows how to rinse you and they'll use emotion, sentiment, news, whatever it takes to distract you from making the decisions that keep you profitable. And then what's so hilarious about all of this is whenever people do take profits and do de-risk, and we talked about this last time because I was mentioning to you how I was de-risking some Bitcoin around 49 and 54,000. And there's people going mad, being like, you sold early. I'm like, but do you know when I bought? It's the only market in the world where you're wrong for being profitable. And it's fucking hilarious to me
That
because I'm
is
like, it's
that is
clear
insane.
as
That is insane greed. Like, oh my, like we're fucked, bro.
it's a different type of greed. It's a different type of greed. And I don't know if people are ready for this world that we're actually moving into. I think
They're
just
not.
as of last year with this chat stuff and a lot of the artificial intelligence that's moved in, we're getting close to a world that will be hard to delineate between what's reality and what has been generated by a computer. And we see this being used in scams now. Like if you're somebody who uses crypto keywords, it will give you advertisements that are crypto based. And they're now using these deep fake technologies to have very convincing advertisements. telling you to send over whatever amount of coins and they'll send you back double or whatever bullshit. And it's still
Yeah.
working. That's why they're paying money to sit to do these advertisements. And we're just getting started with this. Like
This is all going
this
to
is
hit
really just
so hard, so fast. It's why there will be
exactly.
digital, and it's why the technocracy is fucking imminent. It's
Yeah.
all going to hit us too fast, too soon. And this is the importance of us talking about these things and preparing. You said something, I don't even remember what you were talking about, but you specifically used the words while we still have time. And you're right on the money with that. I view this year really now between now and Q1 of next year as like the last era of living life this
Yeah.
way.
It's the get your
I,
shit together
yeah.
phase.
A door shut, right, in January of 2020. Well, another one is closing in Q2 of next year. And so
Right.
this bull run, if you aren't quite financially free, you might want to take this one a bit seriously and listen to what Above Waters is telling you and be level-headed about this and take a serious, disciplined approach to this, not one based out of a crazy frenzy or euphoria. That's what I'm doing because and we can switch to charts or whatever and kind of get into see things playing out. I don't know if you had a moment
Yep.
to look into 2032 or 33 because those are the years that I'm really seeing that we can actually reset things because things will have been catastrophe. Things will have been broken. America's a third world country at that point, and we have to kind of start over with new currencies, whether that's we've either rejected the CBDC at that point and it's failed,
Mhm.
or they've implemented it so hard that I don't even associate with that world. I'm in the world of people who don't use that currency. That's how I view 2033, 20 that point. So that's essentially
Yeah.
saying we have less than 10 years to see the euro, the yen, the dollar, all these things disappear and become digitized or disappear, become digitized and rejected also.
Yeah.
Because these governments and these currencies, this cannot continue. And cyclically, we are at a point where this is what has happened in the past. A lot of the similarities, you sent me down a path of looking at 1940, right?
Mm.
And what was really interesting for me, let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's get this up.
Yeah, and remind me in a moment to talk a little bit about the whole 2030 timeline, or we could finish off with that a little bit later, since that's like pretty far out from now,
Mhm.
and it's best to maybe take this in phases. But please feel free to share what you're getting into with World War II, and then I could maybe get into where that all started between us, like why we started investigating this particular timeline.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, so that's useful. It I'm bringing this up because you had asked me to look at the Year of the Dragon, 1940 and 1941. There was a bit of a pump that April, and then the market just kind of fell. And why
Yep.
that time period is so interesting is because what I can offer you is a viewpoint of the symbolism of where things were energetically. That I don't know with your disciplines or what you look at, that you probably aren't looking at it from this viewpoint. All this probably makes no
I
sense.
sometimes I sometimes do. Yes, I have a very like it's not my go-to form of analysis, but
Mhm.
I do have a grasp on it and I've studied very, very deeply into mythology, so I get the relationship between all of these luminaries and the storyline and the power and the symbolism as a decoder. So
Okay.
I do have pretty solid grasp of that. But when it comes to the specifics of the degrees and all of these different alignments, it's not something that I spend a lot of time doing. So please feel free to share everything that you think will be useful and have
Yeah.
utility.
And I'm going to assume that your audience is similar. They obviously aren't. Some of them told you about me, but
Some people in my
what is
audience are incredible at astrology. Yes, some people in my community are really high level, not only with sidereal, Vedic, but also tropical. Yeah.
well, fundamentals are always useful. So I'm just going to speak from a very high level as if
Beautiful.
I,
Do it.
and so really what I want to just demonstrate to you is a lot of these symbols in these signs or in these areas are very much in the same place that they are now. We had this little symbol here, Jupiter, in the sign of Aries, which we had a year ago. It's currently now in the sign of Taurus. If we let me change the chart here. Did that change for you? You seeing April 12th up here?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, this is going to work smoothly then. All right, so you see now Jupiter is in the sign of Taurus here, which is an earth sign. Earth relates to tangible things related to the five senses. Taurus in particular is the second zodiac sign, which supports the first. The first zodiac sign is going to talk about beginnings, right? So birth, the body, things that come first. Taurus being second, coming under that, is going to support that which comes first. Supporting the body relates to things like food, currencies. It also, and the physical structure of the body is going to relate to the voice, the mouth, the neck,
Mhm.
the things that we say. The second area or house, Taurus, is also going to relate to foundations and upbringing and family and things like clothing. All the things that support the body essentially are going to be related to Taurus because it's second. It comes after the body. So Jupiter is a gas giant. It's a planet. And being a gas giant, gas expands. That symbolism translates. Jupiter tends to expand what it touches. Further in its symbolism, it correlates to expansion that comes along with a word you mentioned earlier, wisdom, good experiences. Wisdom can be in the form of a teacher. Wisdom can be in the form of a good law. It could be in the form of philosophy, spirituality. Wisdom can come in many forms, right? So when we see Jupiter influencing things, that symbolism tends to follow. So those things are being expanded related to what Taurus symbolizes. Currencies are expanding, are they not? Food issues, land, earth issues, earth, Taurus. We're seeing earthquakes now, and we also did during that era of 1940 and 1941. In 41, Jupiter, let me go ahead and animate this further. Let me go a year
And
ahead.
let's remind the audience that 1940 was really like the first big year for World War II. World
Mhm.
War II started in 1939 in the year of the rabbit. And in just last year, the year of the rabbit in 2023, we had this war declared by Israel. And this is the origin of what made me bring this to Sama's attention. And we'll go like real deep into this as we go. I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that the key thing that was happening on the world stage in 1940 was World War II. And the date that he has pulled up of April 8th was right around essentially within 24 hours of a total solar eclipse, just like we had this year, a total solar eclipse in 2024 on April 8th. Now, not only is this aligning with the Chinese year of the dragon, the eclipses of 1940 align. All of the lunar and solar eclipses are in alignment, and the Hebrew calendar is also in alignment with the Gregorian calendar. This is very, very rare to have
Very,
that particular alignment, meaning
very.
that Rosh Hashanah, this upcoming Hebrew New Year, that'll be on October 2nd, was also in 1940 on October 2nd. And it was also on a total solar eclipse or an annular solar eclipse. That is big.
Yeah.
So that's what made me bring this to Sama's attention because I saw all that synchronicity on my end. Chinese year was aligning, eclipses were aligning, year of the sorry, and then also the big takeaway with the Hebrew calendar, the Gregorian calendar. And then on top of that, the fact that this Hebrew year of 5,784, it adds up in numerology to 24 before reduction. And we're in the year 2024. And if you look at that Jupiter symbol that Sama just pointed to, that is the 24 symbolism. That's sickle and cross. So there is so much Jupiter symbolism for this particular year. It's unbelievable. So this is crazy to hear some of the things that you're bringing up right now with these similarities.
What's particularly fascinating is not just that Jupiter is here, but that it's approaching Uranus this year as well, which we are also living through. What's different about 40 and 41 is Saturn was there as well. Now, the symbology Saturn is, you could consider it to be the opposite of Jupiter, where Jupiter might expand, Saturn wants to negate. So that's where we see experiences or an energy of a Saturnian person or a Saturnian transit where we're going to see the need for efficiency. We're going to see reduction. We're going to see things cut away. We're going to see people get laid off. We're going to see colder weather instead of warmer weather, right? You can consider it the opposite of that archetype. So Saturn can have a freezing effect And what currencies ruled by Taurus went through during that time is a bit of a seizing effect. Now, if we look at 2024, Saturn's nowhere to be found. And in fact, actually, Saturn at 14 degrees and now Jupiter at 19, this is considered a wide, helpful energy depending on Western astrologers. Vedic astrologers don't really look at this aspect very much. But Jupiter is basically leaving the, let's say, the watchful eye or energy of Saturn energy, which is, as we explained, to negate or to reduce. And Uranus represents shock, suddenness, quickness. It is the higher octave of Aquarian energy, which is very human and very technological. Aquarian energy has correlations to awkwardness, the black sheep archetype being the one in the family who maybe doesn't fit in. It's a different Saturnian energy. It's a more progressed Saturnian energy in which there's a higher intellect, and it's often represented by geniuses and criminals, actually. Aquarius coming after Capricorn energy is interesting for you guys to note because Capricorn tends to govern and rule authority, big business, and government. Both of these are Saturnian energies, but if Aquarius is coming after Capricorn, that tells you that humanity, decentralization, which is Aquarian, Capricorn is top down, decentralization, humanity, technology, and revolutionary technology, that the Capricorn energy, which is more about what is tried and true and stable, that energy that they're familiar with, Aquarian energy can actually supersede that top-down structure by bringing new revolutionary things. So this comes back to us saying that this tech and crypto could free us. But again, this is still a Saturnian energy. It's still reductive. It's still restrictive. Like you said, blockchain. This can still be used by governments once they smarten up, or once time is over, which Saturn governs time, to put things in place in which technology is now enslaving humans. And it doesn't take much of a big top-down government to do that. They can send the AI robots from a bunker or from space, theoretically. I'm just making stuff up here, right? So Pluto, the planet of power now, has moved into Aquarius. Power now for all human beings is more Aquarian than it is Capricornian. So this whole big centralized top-down structure thing is no longer the wave. It's more of networks, small groups, small tribes, tech, and being smart and being human and talking to people and having connections with networks and people who can actually help you. Pluto being in Aquarius is actually opposite where it was during World War II when it was in Leo. Same axis. These energies actually exist on an axis to each other. So Aquarian energy could be considered the opposite of Leo, which is more of like kings and kingdoms. And it's a more solar energy where Saturn is, again, the furthest visible planet from the Earth and is a lot colder. This is a lot more of a warmer energy here in Leo. So I would say it's important to know that the structure of big government is dissipating, it's leaving, and that also affects why we're going to see currencies collapse and why the power shift, our big concern needs to be, do we want that to be a technocracy that is enslaving us, or do we want to use that energy to help free us? What's also interesting is this little symbol here. This is Neptune here and the sign of Virgo, which has to do more of like service. Women, for example, were, whether they knew how to be nurses or not, they had to like step up and volunteer. There was a lot more of a demand of people acting from a place of service, whether it was for cooking or making military clothing, this, that, or whatever. We're on the opposite of the axis now in Pisces, which is the 12th sign, the last zodiac sign. And Pisces is not a material energy. It's very spiritual. It's watery, which has to do with this line here is symbolizing two fishes that are swimming in opposite directions, but they're connected, in the sense to say that Piscean energy has to do with things that have to do with being tied to things that you kind of have to surrender to. It's often very much, I compare it to just being out at sea and it's foggy and you can't see shit. And you're either going to make it there through the grace of the universe or the winds or whatever, or you're not. Maybe something can kill you. Maybe a wave comes and splashes you over. It's really about surrendering to what is when it comes to Piscean experiences. And unfortunately, that can bring about experiences of victimization. So wherever Pisces is in a chart, what that manifests like in the real world is ashrams, spiritual centers, retreat centers, jails, prisons, vacations, hotels, B&Bs. And this is a water sign, so watery substances, alcohol, spirits, gases, marijuana, drugs, pharmaceuticals, escapism, things that are not material.
Hmm.
So with Neptune being here, we see some of that increasing in society with people checking out rather than more of the Virgo energy of wanting to be of service. So a lot of this is very similar, but there are some differences that I think are important for people to be aware of. Like with the March 23rd, 1940 eclipse in Libra, we versus me is really the archetype of Libra versus Aries, peace versus war. That's tension between nations then. We have tensions between nations now. And we have a series of eclipses in Aries and Libra. This solar eclipse, I'm hearing of things where governments are now trying to sue each other. I think the EU is trying to sue the Irish court. Like they're bickering with each other. They can't keep it together either. And this is why their governments will become smaller, because they're beefing with each other, and we're being caught in the middle of it, unfortunately. Then they had that eclipse, which you mentioned, right? Then the moves became really aggressive. Spying increased. They had the Gestapo stuff, new intelligence and new spy systems. We'll see that shit again too, right? Then they had leadership changes out the wazoo that year. There's so many elections
Yeah.
this year, same thing. The Jews and other people as well, which they don't talk about in the history books. They seem to be a focus on the Jews, and that's fine. I'm not trying to make a political statement here, but all kinds of people started being hunted, and there's all kinds of civil unrest during that time as well. And there was a draft. It's not like, and if there's a draft in America, I think that'd be fucking hilarious, unless they're trying to use all these migrants they're letting in. I don't see a bunch of Americans going to war for Biden, but I'm not a normie, so I don't know. Maybe people would love to go
Yeah.
to war for Biden. I don't know. Then there was a retrograde of this. Where's this symbol here? Venus in Virgo. That in the year 1940, actually, if I back up, that went into Cancer and Gemini, and that showed alliances falling out. Venus is important because it's a financial planet and it also relates to harmony. It's, you could say, the boss or the energy in charge of the energy of Libra, where the eclipses were occurring. Our version of that this year is we're going to have a Mars retrograde at the end of 2024, which election season in America. And these eclipses are affecting, as we've covered, alliances. So I would expect alliances to shift dramatically after December going into January of next year.
Yeah.
And I've told people who may have seen this video on my channel, it's called the Climate Change Wars. I think this might be the last election in America. It's going to be a shit show for sure. But I don't see things changing or us going down any other route to undo that outcome, you know. And during the Venus retrograde and these eclipses too, Nazi Germany invaded too the Soviet Union under an eclipse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, America's just being invaded by migrants. We're not being invaded by Nazis right now, or maybe we are. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
But they're doing well with the predictive programming because today the Civil War movie comes out and the whole
and
brief
that's
synopsis of it is it's the American Civil War V2.
it's like it's happening on purpose or something. The thing too with Uranus and the Earth signs too is the hurricanes, heat waves, terror attacks, starvation. A lot of that happened in 40 and 41. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of this is
This
very reflective. Yeah.
for sure. And the one thing that you were talking about when you brought up royalty or you brought up the idea of kings, and that was very much in the 1930s going into the early 40s. The royalty knew it was time to be that chameleon that changes its colors, right? No different than the mafia deciding to like join forces with the intelligence agencies. Like they get a deal, an offer. They say, you know, you join us and you could still keep up the criminal bullshit you're doing. You just do it with a different uniform.
Yep.
And that's essentially what was going on in that time frame.
Yeah.
So the first nations to really go hardcore against the parasite of Zionism in the 1930s and 1940s became the enemy of the world and became the target, the bad guy, right? And that's very much what we're hearing, what they were trying to push with Putin, and now it's flipping, and there's a lot of support going to Palestine. So it's starting to shift over energetically into Netanyahu. And I agree with you. We have so much change happening right now and so much buffoonery going on in like the American political landscape that if there was to be an election this year, if Biden perhaps isn't removed early or passes early, then it's going to be a very tumultuous and very divided time frame. So it's not shocking that they're releasing this Civil War movie today, especially in a very important date. It's exactly equidistant to the last solar eclipse we just had a couple days ago to the date of April 15th. And April 15th is one of the most important ritual dates. For those that don't know, April 15th is a date that we've seen a lot of shenanigans going on. It's not necessarily something as hardcore as like 9/11 or when C-19 was declared a pandemic, but it is something that gets heard by all peoples around the world. And the last couple of events were the Notre Dame fire, which I'll return back to in a moment, also the Boston Marathon bombing. But I think the most important one is the sinking of the Titanic and the story that surrounds that whole ritual, because the people that were on that boat were influential bankers that opposed the Federal Reserve System. And then 1 year later,
That's
1913,
the
yeah.
Federal Reserve was
So
created.
exactly. And I feel if you keep up with current events, what just happened recently with the Titan submersible and then also the launch of Fed Now, that is so synchronized. And it's right here, sandwiched in between the Russia-Ukraine invasion and what just happened with
Fucking
Israel
thing.
and
It's the same.
Hamas.
And what
So
happened 10
these
years
events are
after
very much like a ripple effect in time,
the
right? Like there's this droplet and then it kind of expands outwardly. And I think that this is about as dialed in as it gets when you start combining all of these elements all together.
you make the planets that aren't in the exact same place, which was really interesting for me to see, is that they were just in the opposite place, man. So this is a continuation or a reversal in some cases of what took place then. So to be looking at this time period of 1945 to 41 is super key. And
Yeah.
if and to touch upon that with what I said about currencies expiring and 10 years later, what happened after the war? Bretton Woods, which they are working towards, and they want that to be the CBDC. And so they have these different factions who are making their CBDC, whether it's the BIS, or whether it's SWIFT, right? Or whether it's
Right.
China or the BRICS. They see the writing on the wall. They're like, America's fucked. Let's see which one of us can be top dog here. And so they are all bickering with each other. And we all need to really just be aware of how that's going to affect us and orient ourselves in a world that is collapsing. We have not seen something like this, but it is happening.
Yeah.
It's very much reflective of World War II in that time period. America emerged
Absolutely. And
from power then. It's not going to do that this time.
yeah, and just everyone like getting back to what I was talking about a moment ago with this whole like the so-called bad guys just joined the side of the winning narrative
Mhm.
after World War II. And all that meant was these royals and these apex predators were more in the shadows. They were not in publicity as much. They were almost turned into a joke in a way, in a lot of senses. And that has been ramped up even more lately since the death of this past queen and all the controversy in the city of London. So what we're watching now is like we're moving into the next transition, which could very well be like a United Nations globalized court system where
That's exactly what they
countries
want to put
and
in. That's exactly what they want to put in. If you live in a
yeah,
Western country right now, in 10 years, if you're still there, that's what it's going to look like.
yeah.
Unless, I don't know. Let me not even go to unless, but that's what they have in store.
So I want to quickly
Let's
show
win the
this
Civil War, I
because it's
guess.
happening. And this is happening live as we're recording this. This is a JP Morgan chart, so JP Morgan Chase. And you can see as of today on market open, there has been a big dump.
Mm,
And everyone who follows finance knows that just last year on March 10th, there was a retail banking black swan of Silicon Valley Bank and
mm,
Silvergate. And
mhm.
this is very fascinating it's very fascinating how that happened just right before that solar eclipse that happened in April of last year. And now
Mhm.
here we are just days after this, and we're starting to see a parabolic advance in banking stocks. And then today, over the last couple of days, we're seeing lots of weakness. But at the same time, we're seeing gold shoot up parabolically. We're seeing
Mhm.
the dollar even getting stronger. So this
Mhm.
is like while we're watching the market do what it's doing at this particular time frame, if you look at from when it was bullish to just recently, it was from eclipse to eclipse. Right
Yeah.
here, this is
Yeah.
right around that October
Mhm.
eclipse of
Yes.
2023. And
Yeah.
look at what we went up into 2024 total solar eclipse on April. This is what I've been teaching my people about how to just simplify what's been going on in the markets. Eclipses are big pivot points of energy.
They are
Full
huge.
moons and new moons are energetic pivots that are on smaller time frames. But when you're around a eclipse season, which I'll just in my terms share, and then you could add on your thoughts, but I call an eclipse season anything from the full moon after a solar eclipse and then before the new moon before a lunar eclipse. So it will be seemingly like a 2 month time frame. And why that's important is because it will make the full or new moon that follows an eclipse feel a little bit stalled out or a little bit unusual in market behavior. I know in your recent video, you brought up this past lunar eclipse was out of bounds. And you brought up an awesome, explanation of how to visualize it all. It would be like your parents going on a vacation and the kids are just at home, unsupervised, and you kind of almost expect chaos, but you have some rules that you leave. It's just you don't expect them to follow them. You might come home and they had a party, right? So that actually is in perfect alignment with the kind of way that I teach how the full or new moons go around either eclipse. And we just passed through a very, very exoteric eclipse. Everyone on the world stage knew about this eclipse. It was a big deal.
Deal.
Compared to past
Yeah, big
eclipses, this
deal.
one yeah. Probably the most important one before this was the one in 2017, right?
Mhm.
Anyways, so I just wanted to start off with this and then let's move into this year of the dragon analysis. And then I want to show everyone this 1941 year because it was the last time that Jupiter Uranus conjunction was in Taurus, which is specifically what's coming up on April 20th. Were you going to say something, brother?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I made the point clear that since the influence of Saturn won't be touching the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, this bull run is going to be insane. It's because the restrictive effect that happened to money in 1940 and 41, it's not going to be there this time. And Uranus specifically, as I was talking about new technologies that can be above the grip or purview of traditional government, that is what crypto is. And that is what new AI tech stocks are, which is why they're going to be incredibly bullish, in particular, this bull run. And so this isn't financial advice, but my particular portfolios they're weighted that way for this year in particular because of these particular influences.
Yeah, and just to give people a little background on where this all came from, it was from, again, earlier in this podcast, I was sent a video from one of the people in my community that Sama just released maybe 2 videos ago. Feel free to plug the name. I forgot the name of the video.
Oh, yeah, it's like, like what was it? Like Bitcoin to 15K, ETH to no.
Sure, yeah. It
ETH to
had it had
50K, Bitcoin to
prices in the
150. Yeah. Well, my channel is Sama Practical Astrology to make it practical. Or if you search the financial astrologer, I'll come up. So that's all. If they're not familiar, you can find me that way. And
Yeah, we'll make
it's
sure to put links and everything
able to links.
in the description. And so it was sent to me because in my analysis, I've been very, very clear for over 6 months now, going on probably over half a year at this point, that during the year of the dragon, it is very normal for us to top out by late March into early April, and then we have a pullback into the month of June, specifically around the full moon, if it's in late May or a full moon in early June. So there was very specific timing to all of this. And this is old analysis to those that follow my work. But if you're new to my work, that's a brief synopsis of how I was expecting this year to go a half a year before we even got to this very day. And it's so synchronistic that we're connected today because it's right around that time frame. of
Yeah.
us just passing through late March into kind of halfway through April. So we're looking at the S&P
I want to say
500
a few
right
things
now, and
I want to say a few things about that. That's interesting too. Is around the eclipse last, was it October or September? That full moon where the market just dumped.
was October 14th,
October
2023.
14th. Yeah, that was around there was an eclipse and a full moon around like within a week of each other. It was around that point that I had also made a video saying, look, the world is going to have more confidence in American businesses than in these governments. Governments are collapsing. So things are going to shift from treasuries to back into the market. That's where people all across the world are going to put their money. The world's at war. You're not going to put it in your local bank. You're going to put it in America or in a dollar while America still looks good for the time being. And what's interesting about what you're talking about here, this time frame that shifted that you're getting into, April last month in March, there was with the banking issues, they put a funding program in that they let expire in March. So
Yeah.
that program that was keeping all these fucked up banks that are holding either commercial real estate, which nobody wants because we're in an Aquarian age. And to your point, this is an era of loneliness. People aren't around each other anymore. They want to work from home or they either have the means to not, go into the office or they just don't want to be around each other. So commercial real estate is under and no one trusts these fucking governments. They would rather be in the market. So the bond markets are going to continue to be fucked up, right? So the banks are in trouble. And for them to let this banking program expire at the end of March creates a scenario for a lack of liquidity and for some banks to go bust in the month of April. Now, why would they do that? On purpose? Accident? Coincidence? So a dip is very likely this month throughout the whole month because, as you know, it's liquidations and liquidity, right? And we're talking about liquidity here. There's no liquidity for April. It'll come back, don't worry, right? But just like the charts you showed, the
Yeah.
dollar's getting strong, and it kind of makes sense actually with gold ripping and all this
Yeah.
stuff. They kind of need to put the
And
brake
I'm
on things. Like things have ripped for 3 months
yeah, and
straight.
I'm gonna go
Bitcoin put
through
it
it.
like Bitcoin's candles have been insane.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is it's unsustainable in so many ways, specifically from a technical perspective. When we're looking at weekly RSI breaking into the 80 territory and
mhm.
just really a declination of
And you
volume
have that
after some
hot
of these
You have
big,
the hot inflation print too. Like April's got to
yeah.
be, we have to cool off in April a
Yeah.
little bit, at least a
And
little
getting
bit.
getting into the sidereal thing, and it's what I shared because I did something called the Year of the Dragon Decoded over on my Patreon, and I released it before the Year of the Dragon, and it went over a lot of what I'm about to show you today. But I just packaged it in a really nice, clean way to have like no confusion for people. I was bringing up that in sidereal, when the sun's moving into Pisces and then through the phase of moving into Pisces and then into Aries, that is like one of the most crucial time frames for markets when you're looking at
Yeah, yeah.
the cyclicality of markets.
You're going
So
from
everything
water,
from this mid,
to fire, and that is very volatile. You go from water energy to
so
fire. Yeah.
especially in this particular year. So let me get to this real quick for everyone. You're going to see I'm going to go through the year of the dragon going all the way back to World War II, 1940, which was the astro chart that Sama started us off with. And this red line is just indicating where we initially topped out during the year of the dragon before having a pullback. So you're going to see that we made it up to early April and then we had a pullback here into early June. So now we're going to go back to the one before this, which is one of the other ones that I told you to look into because it was the dot-com bubble.
Right.
And here we have, again, for everyone, this green box. Every time you see green boxes, that means Year of the Dragon. I made it very, very simple for everyone. This red line was the top of the market initially. It actually ended up being the cycle top, by the way. So if you de-risked this back in 2000, you were a fucking legend.
Mhm.
Okay. So I don't want to hear it from the people that are telling me that I de-risked early. Like that doesn't exist when you're in a market that's overheated.
Exactly.
Back in
Exactly.
2000, everyone got fleeced in retail. The only people who walked away were the people that were making these fake companies. So anyway, getting back to this, we topped out in late March. You can see March 24th. We had our pullback effectively into late May. We did get a little bit of a flash crash, but that was bought up too quickly to even count. And this ended up leading to a double top effectively in September, and then it broke structure. Now, I want everyone to pay attention to this because this is very similar to 1941. okay, which was the last time we had this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So we're going to go back again. And no, 2000 was a black swan event because it was the dot-com bubble crash. So the Nasdaq went on to lose like 87% of its value from that top in March. So here we are in 1988, again, year of the dragon. You see, we initially topped out in March, but then we really kind of double topped in the micro in mid-April. This is coincidentally today, April 12th. And then this followed up with a pullback into late May. You're seeing a pattern here.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we're going back to 1976. Highest we went early April, and then pull back the lowest we went in that cycle during this whole year of the dragon was in early June. Same pattern over and over again. Here in 1964, we made it up to late April. We actually had a nice recovery, went up a little higher into May, but look, the dip that we had came right into that time frame of early June. So this would be called like a higher high bull trap.
Mhm.
This was initially a bull trap because you ended up breaking the prior supports. And this would have liquidated a lot of people. It would have made a lot of people panic sell when you see this sort of jump higher followed by lower lows,
Yeah.
lower lows. So going backwards, I'm going to have to change these candles over to area. We're going to go to 1952. This one was very elusive, but effectively we did the same thing. This was the start of the year of the dragon. We had a downtrend. Then we moved up into late March, had our correction into May, kept it going. So it's the same sort of thing. The pullback in April is there. It's very noticeable. Now, this is where I'll stop and then I'll shift over to the 1941 chart. We have 1940, I said earlier, Year of the Dragon, same as it is this year. We had the same eclipse dates, same as this year. We also had the same synchronization between the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar. We topped out on April 8th on that solar eclipse. Then we started to chop and then we fell off a cliff. This was due to the invasion of the National Socialists against many other European countries. I think it was Belgium,
Mhm.
Luxembourg, the Netherlands. Whole slew of invasions happened on that May 10th date. And let's get to that in a moment because it's clear that May is not a bullish month either in this analysis. April is kind of the pivot point, and May tends to be where you get some wild action. Well, we dipped still into the same exact time frame, early June, and look at this. This was one of the greatest buy the dip moments in
Mhm.
that year.
I
Now, I'm
think
not
that's
saying it ended up.
that might be one of the reasons
Sorry.
why my video interested you, because I did kind of advise, but not really about, I said I'm going to be taking profits into late June because what I saw astrologically that I didn't get into in that video was a dip in June. So this is very interesting that the market just for whatever reason wants to gravitate towards a dip in June. I think we'll see that
Yeah.
again this.
And just to return back to right now, we're looking at the 2024 chart, and we could see that so far we've topped out into late March, March 28th. Right here, we got a very big shakeout candle, and as of today, it's still bleeding out. So if we break below this 5,050 point level, that is going to look like a blow off top. That's going to freak a lot of people out who don't know the script. Like, I'm not saying that I know the script, but I am showing you the pattern, and the pattern is undeniable. If this aligns with late May or early June, this is an absolute buy the dip moment. That's not financial advice. I'm just letting you know what the charts have been revealing. But now the most important part of today is this. This is a chart that I made just for you. I shared it in one of my Red Pill podcasts, which is a weekly podcast that I do over on my Patreon. But I made it because of connecting with you and because I got so many people bringing this up that are into astrology in particular. And what I always tell my people is no matter what astrologers you're listening to, no matter who you're listening to, go back in time and look at it for yourself. Okay? Like I know that you are great at what you do. I could feel it in you. You know, I know that you're very much in tune with your instrument, but it is not of anyone's best interest to just blindly take anyone's truth and just go with that for your investment decisions or for your financial or wealth planning. Go back in the past and align things for yourself. And that's what I'm doing right now. This is gonna, I think, be very helpful for those that are trying to take this astrology stuff and apply it to their investment thesis. So here we have the year of 1941. This blue line right here was the last Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. This was like 84 years ago. That was the last time this event happened. So to give some a credit, this is a very rare alignment. This is very rare. Well, what we see is our eclipse season was at a similar time of the year. These are the first eclipses. We have one in March, followed by the solar eclipse a couple weeks later. And look at the effect that these eclipses had. We had this post-eclipse bullish kind of pump and dump. There was a fake out, a bull
Mhm.
trap. It made people start to go long. It made speculation a little more greedy, makes retail essentially trapped at the top and their exit liquidity for the elite. So, or the so-called elite. And then we have this bigger dump into the month of April, throughout April. And right here, this white line is important, whether you're into TA or not, into technical analysis or not, because I think it's very helpful to realize the interaction that we have with certain times of the year. And this is very clear. When you see us breaking below this white line and us not being able to get above this white line is
Being suppressed.
perfect forwards and backwards from this Jupiter Uranus conjunction. It's
Mhm.
3 weeks backwards and a little over 3 weeks forwards. And it ended up being like a cup and handle sort of deal. Just this choppy downside, confusing, like, are we going to go down? Are we going to recover? That type of energy. And you look at what led into it and then what led out of it, but during it.
Mhm.
So I'll go step by step. Correction into the full moon of April. By the way, guys, we're about 12 days out from the April full moon post solar
Mhm.
eclipse. We
Mhm.
lost 6.5% on that month of April. That is a lot for the stock market, especially back in 1941. That would
Mhm.
be today like the equivalent of 15%. And if we were talking crypto, that would be like a 30% correction in like Ethereum. That's
Mhm.
big. All right.
Yeah.
So the month of April was dog shit leading into this Jupiter Uranus conjunction. Then we had this chopped around. We were initially bullish off of it, but we started to get some resistance right there at that crucial trend line. That's why I drew it out. And then it took us about 4 weeks or 1 month later to effectively break out. And we broke out during the month of June. So we started to get bullish right around this June new moon. And we had an incredible June and July, went up 11%. That's big. We even broke higher than the yearly highs that came in April. And then we had a double top. And the power of this double top is that it was into the eclipse season that ended off the year. And
Mhm.
this eclipse was is very similar to the eclipse timing that we have this year. It's in around Rosh Hashanah, the Hebrew New Year. But we can see that you got a couple of chances to GTFO in the month of July,
Mhm.
and then there was one last chance to really get out. It was September. I almost know that has everything to do with Kabbalah and Judaism. Their calendar is what
Mhm.
runs this more than the Gregorian. But then we entered a downtrend. So if you look at by the end of that year, 1940, we had a big, big, big correction. I mean, for 100 days, we lost 20%. And this didn't stop, bro. This shit kept on going all the way till
Yeah.
1942. This
Yeah.
was not a positive
Yeah.
this particular thing was not positive.
Mhm.
I'll just leave it at that. Like it
Mhm.
was initially helpful, but I think your response to it of like being diligent about the de-risking and serious about it, I agree with. Now, whether the timing happens or doesn't
This.
on either side, all that matters is that you do consider for anyone who's in this market, if you have exposure to this and
Mhm.
you're especially in crypto and you're doing really fucking well, a couple months down the line from this conversation, just don't feel bad for taking profits because the world we're heading into, it's not going to be as easy to make money, especially in the corporate
It's not.
world.
Yeah.
AI will take away a lot of jobs. So I hope these charts were clean and simple for everyone. I wanted to show not only the cyclicality of the year of the dragon and how we tend to get a pullback from right now into late May or early June. June and July are actually super bullish months. And even in this example of 1941, where we had this particular astrological alignment, which we are going to have this year as well. So big month of April ahead.
Yeah, man. What I love about this is it is a completely different viewpoint that very much mirrors the video that I made that we were talking about. where I talk about the different points that I would be taking profits. That's not financial advice for others to do the same, but really, I mean, that chart and the points where you're showing the tops and the dips are very similar to that video. And you're making this with a viewpoint covering 1940. This isn't a chart for any of you to go back and look at. It's not like you just made those dips up. So for that to
Nope.
be very similar to what I'm saying in that video and what we have uncovered is very similar between 1940, 41 and this time period, I'm predicting the year is going to play out very similar. Again, the effect of Saturn on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction won't be as, it won't be there. So the pump that will happen at the points where it comes to take profits will require greater discipline than what you saw in those charts because it'll be meme coin mania. It'll be S&P to 6,000, 7,000, and people are going to be
Sure.
like, there's so much more money to be made, the greed and all the stuff we were talking about. But that's going to bring back inflation and it won't be able to run that hot forever. And so
Yeah.
when we run
And I
into
want to let people
September,
know,
when we run into
yeah,
that September, don't be surprised if we see another dip. What's different about this year as well, again, if Biden is around, and even if he isn't, America and dollar liquidity does interesting things around elections. So I will say that is different. And again, that also
yeah,
speaks to the fact that the restrictive effects of Saturn aren't there on this conjunction with currencies. But after that election, after that mysterious liquidity that appears during elections, it has made its way through the system and makes things even more inflationary. You saw that tail off of a dip into a bear market. So that should give you a hint of what is to come in 2025. So taking profits this year in particular, I'm not fucking around with this bull run. And I don't think anyone following you is either. This is the season to make serious profits and not to be deluded into thinking that those valuations, because they will be crazy with this effect, they won't be as restricted because of the lack of the Saturnian influence. People will be tempted to stay in. And very similar to what you saw in 2000, a lot of them aren't going to expect these dips and get washed out and actually make nothing. So they will have the vanity of the high portfolio and the pictures and the tweets, and they won't actually
yeah,
cash
screen
out. Don't
caps.
let that be.
Yeah. Yeah. And also for everyone who's listening to this, stop sharing your screen caps of your portfolio and your trades. No one gives a fuck. Like you could Photoshop that shit easily.
Yeah.
Like no one cares. Like only a loser has to prove themselves in that type of way. Like you're more than that, right? Like it's really sad actually how much of that is going on in the crypto influencer space as some way of luring people into not becoming self-reliant, but just following along drama and
It's
bait.
always leverage.
But
It's always a leverage screenshot too. It's like,
yeah.
come on.
And I don't want to I don't want to shit anyone's I guess hard work, but I think it's very dangerous if you're opening up a video because of an O-face thumbnail and then the first thing you're told to do, any financial incentive is to sign up to a leverage exchange.
Yeah.
If somebody is telling you to sign up
Buy
to a
bit,
leverage
think
exchange
low.
as part of their business model, that's yeah. Anyways, getting back to this market, I think for those that watched a couple videos ago, and especially those that are in my community that are fascinated with your work, kind of combining what's going on right now with the crypto market and these astrological skills, I think that we are kind of seeing a lot of the things that you brought up in your last video play out with a specific one about crypto. So tip my hat to you on that because you brought up something, I believe it was like March 10th on date of your video, and you talked about how we would most likely be getting up to the 70K-ish area, chop around a little bit. And bro, that's exactly how this has went down.
Yeah.
So regardless if there's any discrepancies between what I just reviewed and what you were sharing about your outlook on the
I don't see
Uranus.
these here. I just see slight differences between 1940, 41 and this time
Yeah,
period. I tried to
yeah,
demonstrate them symbolically that the differences are actually on the opposite end of an axis. So there's a
mhm,
continuation of a story that kicked off in 40, 41 here. And what you talked about with April and the down month is very much in alignment with what I talked about in that video. We'll probably come down and then definitively cross past the all-time high and then we are into euphoria land, where it is
yeah,
PLs and
and
the Uber drivers saying,
yeah,
"Hey, are you into Doge?" and all that stuff will come, but it's not gonna
yeah.
last.
Yeah, and I think maybe this is a good time to talk about our outlook for the end of the year because I don't know where you stand on this, and it's not to put you in the hot seat, but just to kind of feel out where you're at with this. For me, I feel like we're going to have an incredibly bullish Q4 and Q1. So you said this very, very early that you feel like changes are, or we're going to be in an environment where where speculation switch is flipped on until like Q2 2025. So
Yep.
that aligns very perfectly with my not only my crypto analysis, but my macroeconomic analysis and also how the year of the snake tends to go. So I'll let
Yep.
everyone know here very transparently. I've been saying this also for a while now when I found out that there's a connection to the year of the snake and war, and it has everything to do with the United States of America. So I do not believe that the United States of America will enter the war this year in regards to it being the way that we've watched them enter wars in the past. Like we already know they're funding Israel. We already know this shit show is very much involving America. America has its tentacles on every part of this realm, right? We know
Paying for
that.
it. Yeah.
But they're gonna wait to call it a World War III when America gets involved, just like they did that with World War II, just like they did that with World War One. They waited and waited and waited to give it that like that buzz title, right? So I think that we're going to have more war events throughout this year, but America won't definitively join it until the year of the snake, and that's 2025. And that is really where I think the final liquidity injection will be, just to have a blow off top type of vibe. And then that's where they pull the plug. So we got to see how this month of May and April goes leading into June. But if Bitcoin specifically starts raging into 80K like right now, like if whatever happens that as you're watching this is just a fake out and we go bullish out of nowhere, which I do not believe is the case, but if that was to
Right. Right.
happen and I'm inaccurate, well, then I think this bull run will end very, very soon, very soon. But if we actually stabilize here, we build some market structure, we see Bitcoin maybe come down into like this area, like 56, 57, maybe dip its toes into 53 for like a back test on this prior trading range, we would be in the prime setup for a
Yeah.
glorious
Yes.
typical bull run
Yep.
where Bitcoin regains dominance. It starts to head on its 100K journey. Altcoins stay suppressed because
Mhm.
Bitcoin dominance is not
That's what you
in
want
the
to see,
same
guys.
posture. That's what you want to see. You
Want this
want
like
the people that were going, saying only up from here, boys, and it's only up like that
major.
energy that
If
was
that would
coming
have,
in
we would have
February.
topped out
That's
at
that's
85 and it
dangerous.
would have been over.
Exactly. So if we were to go into this 80 territory today, like this fast, I do think that'd be incredibly unhealthy for this market. It would
Incredibly.
end very similarly
It
to
would be the end.
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think you'd probably have another crypto bull run for quite a while. But if
Mhm.
we were to build some structure and have everything sing this song together, I think Q4 can be very, very bullish overall. And then into Q1 of 2025. But I do stick to my words. You want to get involved in this shit now
Yeah.
before it gets real exciting, you know?
Yeah.
So whatever dips that we're getting between now and this early June or perhaps late May, this is an incredible opportunity to get some exposure, like $2 cost average, because
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get these prices again. If it goes the way that I'm
This is
projecting,
this is one of the last great American bull markets. That's what I'm calling it. So
yeah. And for
it's one,
those that,
and like you said too,
yeah,
if you guys want to be like above waters here where you're taking profits and people are laughing at you during this. Let them be euphoric, right? You want to be positioned, especially if we dip in April and we do come down to the lower 50s, which is healthy. Even if we come down to 48, that's healthy. So if we do and altcoins stay suppressed, it is kind of like a last chance opportunity to get in before these things go crazy.
yeah, absolutely. Because we've already been sideways now for like 30 to 40 days. And if you
Mhm.
look at the same time of year back in 2017, which was really a wild bull run because Bitcoin was still considered a scam back then, it was very, very speculative. I could show everyone right hear what I'm talking about. This was that whole 2016 to 2017 bull run. And when you zoom
Yep.
in right here, this is March of 2017. We're doing a very similar thing. The only thing we haven't done yet is this deeper correction. So it'd be glorious if something like this was to align. And the funny thing, guys, is right over here was a solar eclipse. We had a bullish fake out for about 5 days. We had this distributional top, lower high bull trap, and then it just started getting shorted hardcore. But
Mhm.
this was a much different environment, right? There was no ETF, there was no BlackRock involvement, at least on paper, legally. There was very much a negative opinion about crypto. Not many people were in it except absolute nerds or people that were buying at the top over here. That was pretty much, it was very polarizing at this time. It was up until this cycle that we started to get a lot more well, I think because people were sitting at home for 2 years, there was more time to study stuff on the internet, a lot more. Anyways, I just want to check in with everyone and let them know that I have said some things earlier that might make you feel like there's some doom and gloom, and it's not. I do very much feel like there's a lot of opportunity, even where we're sitting at right now in these markets. And it's something to take advantage of because these things don't come around too often. And what are you feeling in like the attention you give this market? Are you somebody that's mostly invested in crypto, or do you see yourself diversifying your portfolio in other places? What's your opinion on gold and what's going on with that? Like, I don't really know too much about your investment thesis.
So we are living through an era where the Western world's currencies will collapse. And what that will then look like is money goes from public places to private places. And so eventually money will leave market and go to things like gold and silver or cash under the bed or um, if we're gonna put this on YouTube, I'll probably have to cut this part out, but privacy coins, right? So it's gonna go from public to private. And the reason of that is because the public places won't be secure. It's going to be obvious that, hey, wait a minute, these treasuries and government debt that we bought, they're not going to pay this back. And once that hits the public consciousness, then people will turn to other forms of payment and transaction, specifically also because the CBDCs will be so draconic and we will have other options, right? So my thesis is then, well, what are those private things that I can retain control of that are safe? And what have people done in the past? If you have real estate or gold and your currency collapses, well, when your government makes a new currency, it just gets redenominated in that. So a lot of what I consult my private clients with is I look at their chart and see what's more energetically suited to them, whether it's gold or silver or real estate. And traditionally, how this plays out is if you do have the money or the means, it's gold and real estate. That's what Billy Gates is doing. That's what all these other players are doing. They're buying up farmland. The central banks that are against the United States, what are they doing? They're buying gold because they anticipate and or are actively building an alternative currency. Gold has always been a bet against the dollar. Gold has always been suppressed because of that. So when you see gold moving up, that's telling you that America is dying, the dollar is dying. That's what that means. People don't understand these basic correlations. Gold up means dollar and USA insecure in the eyes of the world. That's what that means.
Yeah.
So gold continuing to pump from here on out, it's actually begun an 8-year cycle, which is in line with what I'm telling you about the death of currencies here. Gold is going to rip for
Yeah.
8 years. What does that do to a dollar? What does that do to inflation? What does that mean is happening
Yeah.
in the world?
Yeah.
It's the
You brought it up perfectly earlier. You said if there's a $1 million Bitcoin, then there's $100 gallon of gas, right?
end.
So it's like he's obviously being hyperbole in some way, but the concept is spot on. And it's so amazing that we're connecting today because these charts are incredible. Like the volatility that I'm watching
Everything
today,
is mooning,
the
bro. I
fact,
hit an all-time high. I know April, we're saying it's a down month, but like I said, you
yeah,
guys saw
but the
this.
fact
The
that,
restrictive effect of Saturn isn't there. Everything is mooning. What does that mean for inflation? What does that mean for the dollar? You are witnessing the end. I'm telling you, I'm the crazy person on the hill saying the sky is falling. This is what you're seeing. It's in the charts.
yeah, this is wild to watch what gold's doing today because it getting all the way up to this technical target of $2,400 an ounce, and then this huge wick
Quickly.
on the upside and
Yeah.
rejection.
Yeah.
This is a sign of they moved it to this particular price
Mm-hmm.
for this reason, and any de-risking that was going on in the tech sector was moving into this, and now this is like last minute leverage. And what
Mm-hmm.
was probably going on is a lot of like old heads that are like anti stocks or anti crypto, they
Mm-hmm.
started
They're getting in.
FOMOing into gold.
Yep.
They
And now they're
just started
getting
getting
there.
like, this is textbook. This is why
Mhm.
like a lot of people
It's kind of like
sometimes want to
Bitcoin. They're
avoid.
FOMOing in,
Yeah,
and then we're going to go into April, right? And then we're going to chop, but gold's going to keep going.
yeah,
It's very
yeah.
similar. It's
And when
all-time
you're
high.
seeing JP Morgan, which is like a too big to fail elitist Rosicrucian bank, this type of rejection right here and this gap followed by a 6% red candle, this looks like a fucking altcoin right now.
It
This is
does.
not a game. When you see this in markets
This,
and this
this and
type
the
of
gold
movement in
chart,
gold,
this and the gold
yeah,
chart, just if you guys understand what these two charts are telling you. And Jamie
yeah.
Dimon has been selling massive amounts of Chase Bank stock as of this,
Yes. And his
right?
his first ever sale.
Massive amounts. This is America's golden goose, Chase Bank we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
The
That blew my
CEO's
mind. I
selling.
just learned about that. I just learned about that like maybe 2 months ago because I was wondering like, well, he must have been selling maybe into the last like the first Trump election. He must have been selling maybe into the last Shemitah, like before we had the C-19 crash. Like there must be insider shit going on. But he just recently sold, I think in late February, early March, the first time ever selling company shares
Mhm.
ever since he
Ever.
became CEO. Like if that doesn't wake people, if you look into this amount of cashing out that Mark Zuckerberg has been doing in perfect alignment with him getting this bunker in Hawaii, like
Mhm.
it's pretty wild, man. Like we're
Mhm.
watching something being
These people are
orchestrated and
going,
they're barely hiding it from
they
us.
are going to
They're like
leave.
just basically,
They're going to leave. And like when I said America's going to turn to a third world country, what they're envisioning is like, I just want to get out of here and let them burn themselves to the ground. That is what they're thinking to themselves. You don't build bunkers like that for no fucking reason. He's
yeah,
never sold this much.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
can't be the CEO.
it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I think
And that brings in panic. Like that brings in a lot of panic to investors. And that brings in also panic to the people that are keeping their money with that particular bank because you're wondering like what the hell's going on.
well, the banks
But
are
yeah,
the banks can't exist anymore. They're dead. The
yeah.
CBDC is going to replace them. So why not
It's
sell your?
very
You know
it's
that that's
very
what
much this
he knows.
problem reaction solution thing, right? Like it's very much they know and we know. What's brother, you want to know something that's so interesting? I've said CBDCs recently to people that are like not even aware of markets or not really that savvy, but they
It's
know
showing
what
up.
they are.
Okay.
It's becoming public awareness, but like when they were first being talked about, I think heavily, it was probably like 2019 into
Yeah.
2020, we really started to become like kind of, curious as to what the hell's going on here. Well, now I think it's becoming so exoteric that there isn't really a question. It's like we're willing it to happen. It's like with the AI movies or these transhumanist movies. They're showing us it, so they're gonna tell us the world that will manifest. And the CBDC thing is very much that. And the same thing with digital identification and all the other things that are coming down the pipeline. And I want to talk about this really quickly. In my truth is that we're not in the age of Aquarius just yet. In my vision, we need to have a fully cashless and fully paperless world to be truly in this Aquarian age. I think we're in the transition right now. It's very obvious that we're getting close to the end of that transition. But one of the big symbols of Jupiter, again, ruler of Pisces, the sign ruler of Pisces, and the belief that many have that we're no longer in the Piscean age. I have a hard time with that because one of the key symbols of Jupiter is the oak tree, and this comes back to paperwork. And we live in a world of paperwork privilege. You can be the sexiest, most fast, richest, every positive trait, most charismatic. But if you don't have a passport, you're not getting onto an international flight. We live in a world where you can be the most skillless, ugly, have no real talent, anything, and you could become a global politician who's running the whole community based on your opinion. But also maybe because you're a Freemason. But the same thing goes with your access to privileges and rights. you can with paperwork, which money is kind of still paper for now. It's going away. So I think that's a key symbol. We're in the age of burning the paper away, and we're going digital fully in this Aquarian age. Whether you're gonna say that it's ruled by Uranus or ruled by Saturn, it's all kind of the same. In many ways, I feel in regarding this vibe
Their
of
mythology is intertwined. It's pick one. They both.
absolutely, and they have a similar mythology. They're
Mhm.
both overthrown by their by their son. I don't want to. Oh, dude, it's beautiful. We're watching like basically a flash crash right now while we talk. These charts are crazy.
I wanted
So,
to tweet yesterday
just
that Bitcoin's going to 66K, but I didn't. And here we are. I mean, there's a huge liquidity pocket there. But yeah, it would be
yeah.
healthy for this thing to pull back.
So
It needs to.
the the final thought on all of this is like I think that in order for us to truly be in the Aquarian age, we have to be cashless. We have to have no more passports, no more driver's license, no more insurance card, no more paper, no more mail. We have to be fully digital. And that regards that the most important things of our lives is can I go to that place or can I do this thing without this piece of paper? So we've already moved into the QR codes. For the most part, we have Apple Wallet, which allows us to show boarding passes, but we still have to show that passport when we cross through customs.
Mhm.
But if I was actually,
Bro,
I
but
visited ICE.
have you traveled recently? I haven't had to
Well, I
show
was just
my
gonna,
passport really. It's all
hmm,
scanning the face, bro. And so
yes. So facial recognition is
these eras overlap, right? So you arguing when an era
exactly.
begins or ends, it's kind of like I look at conjunctions or what we call ingresses, the entrance of a planet into a particular sign. I look at what's happening in the world. Like when Pluto entered Aquarius in the tropical zodiac last year, there were airstrikes. Pluto representing death, Aquarius being an air sign. Those things aren't coincidences to me. So I look to see like, well, okay, how is this playing out on the mundane level? You could argue that some people could argue the Aquarian era began in 87, 88. The first computer virus began then, right? Atari, I think, came out that year, right? The first, Microsoft and all that was brewing then. You could argue that with the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in the tropical zodiac of 2020, that began the Aquarian area because, well, if your business wasn't online, you weren't making any money. And then crypto had an intense bull run and they printed all this money and tech stocks went crazy. It depends on how you're looking at what's being activated at certain times. What's particularly unique about this decade is that Saturn Jupiter conjunction in 2020 and now Pluto in Aquarius in 23 and 24. These are indications of cycles that are very long that are beginning as well. And kick off energies in air signs that will also continue for hundreds of years in air signs as well. There are still energies in play that are not air based, but a lot of them are coming through this particular decade. And this transition you're talking about is very much scheduled for this decade. And we're going to see a lot of
Yeah.
those shifts Q2 of next year, actually, because Uranus in Taurus is going to move to an air sign of Gemini. Jupiter is going to move to an air
So
sign. A lot
this
of
is
this
exactly the
activity
direction I was going in.
is
Yeah.
waking up this particular decade. And so the
Yes.
digitization of, well, you can't walk into this store without your phone or card or face or that stuff is going to hit us very quickly. It is quite literally around the corner.
Yes. And that's really where I wanted to go with this is that we are getting so close to whatever that thing is. And the Jupiterian symbolism that I've been seeing, like if you look at the Paris Summer Olympics, the original logo for that was just straight in your face. It was the Zodiac symbol of, or it was the symbol of Jupiter. They're not
Literally.
hiding this. Yeah. And then the secondary symbolism that they used was a flame. So I very much feel like we're in the process of like burning away these final moments. This is the phoenix rising from the ashes. And you have to ask yourself, like, do you want to be the phoenix or do you want to be the ashes?
Yeah.
So are you ready to move? Are you ready to sync up with the new age without it taking over your whole, beingness, right?
Yeah.
How to be that chameleon. Because people have heard us say many things today about the crypto market and about cryptocurrency and blockchain, but it doesn't mean that we're not investing in it. We're just here to leverage on it. Like, but we're not making it our god. We're not worshiping it. Like, I don't
Yeah.
give a fuck about what these technocrats want to do. I just have to follow the money. And then I have to take my money and put it there so that I could have more money. And then I could do something very honorable with my profits. And I have
Exactly.
a huge vision in the future of what I want to do. So, this is kind of these steps. It's to go with this flow. Don't worship it in the process just because you're making some money. And I think that's what a lot of people tripped and fell on in 2021. They made all this money off of like Shiba Inu, and then they gave all their prana away to these technocrats. And they don't understand that the future of all of these blockchain technology companies is very much draconian, and it is in alignment with the Agenda 2030 and having, what World Economic Forum says, you'll own nothing and be happy. And I just saw this quite recently. I was walking down the street and I noticed that all the bicycles everyone's using now are these rented bicycles that are like
Mhm.
plugged into the sidewalk. And
Yep.
when I was growing up as a kid, we had our bike was like our biggest responsibility.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
needed to show back home with that fucking bike. Your
Right.
mom would whoop your ass if you didn't. Like it was such an important piece of property,
Yeah.
and we had responsibility over it. And if somebody dented it or kicked it or dropped it, we like took that personally. I'm not saying be so attached here, but my bigger point is today we just go rent the bike, we throw it on the ground, or it's like we don't have any sense of respect or responsibility anymore for these tangible things. And I think that's going to harm the younger generation
Oh, no.
into a place where
Well,
it's almost like where they won't want anything and they will be happy because they're like, I could just rent everything momentarily. And what's that going to do to the way we treat each other?
Well, there are people who understand that, oh, there's a lot of Aquarian energy coming. We can use this to bring back socialism, the quote unquote right way in their eyes. And that's really what we're going through is you're going to see a lot more of this sharing rather than you owning because we are going into a time of questioning value. And they know that the things that are valuable, like food and shelter and prime real estate, are becoming more scarce. And so they are going to promote how it's good because a lot of people are trapped in good versus bad, should versus shouldn't. It's good to share. You don't need to have things of your own. You don't need to have a gasoline powered vehicle. No, let's all share an EV that can be shut down by some faceless entity if you don't do the right things and be a good citizen. And so there's a lot of what will come through that is using an understanding of the energy that will be manipulated into you're a good boy or a good girl if you do XYZ, while they on the other
Right.
end still fly their jets and pollute and bomb this and that and create far more, pollution and carbon waste, this, that, or whatever in a week than you ever could in your entire fucking life if you flew private
Right.
all year long. So that understanding is very often weaponized against us because you can ride energy. You can just flow with it. And that's in part what you're talking about here is their money's in the crypto market too. Think criminals, Biden, didn't Sam Bankman-Fried show you that, guys, that? Whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, there's clean and dirty money in all of these markets. It's just there. It's just money. It's a tool. It's being used. And so
Yeah.
just
Just
because,
thoughts and ideas.
exactly. So just because we're saying currencies are going to collapse, a dump is coming, doesn't mean that we're not in this market to make money either. We are too. And I think some people confuse that, right? They hear that you took profits or that I'm saying, oh, sell around, I'm considering taking profits around June or August, that means, oh, so you're not bullish or this, that. And it's just like, well,
Yeah.
why are you here? What is your goal? And
Right.
so I sounded pessimistic earlier. It's more about an understanding of I need to start with within and I need to start with being and I need to understand with a pure assessment of my situation and where I want to go and removing the things that are in the way of that. So to all of you watching, pessimism, optimism, that is what it is. What's more important is where are you right now? Where do you want to go? Can the market help you do that?
Right.
Can Above Waters help you do that? Can I, my newsletter or the things that I'm saying, if they can help you do that, great. If not, clarity on what will serve you and what you're here to do and live, in my artistic opinion, is what our lives are for. And so I hope that this video and the gains and the profits you may or may not make if you follow some of this are supporting that, your unique once in a lifetime existence. And I hope personally out of my value system that that existence and that life is led with authenticity, freedom, and a sovereignty and an understanding of who and what you really are, not by what you're being told. And sometimes that's a lonely path. Sometimes that's a confusing path because of what we talked about with information and how many times information is out there to send you down an empty chase. And that hasn't been my intention here. That hasn't been your intention. And I think that's why this has been so much fun and our conversations are so much fun and looking forward to many more, bro. This was really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is packed full of value. And also for me, you going through some of this astrological stuff, it's really, really helpful to see a different side of what's going on in that realm from somebody that I resonate with, you know, somebody that's breaking it down and really like is passionate about it, but they're not doing it in a way that's trying to convince anyone, just purely showing you what's going on. I hope that presentation that I shared for everyone today gives you the same vibe. You know, I'm not
Absolutely.
here to have a bias of being bullish or bearish. I'm just here to study the past and see where it's likely to align with this now moment. And more importantly, you know, beyond the duality consciousness of the good and bad or the pessimism or optimism, it's about what can I do to position myself so that the posture that I have is sturdy if things get a little bit volatile, you know? Because
It
if
will.
that was the case going back to 2020 in March, if you were set up effectively and you had the wisdom and the ability to pivot at a moment's notice, you probably would have. And a lot of the reason we couldn't back then was not only because of these draconian, you know, laws that were passed, but like it was mostly because we just didn't have the resources. We didn't have the self-belief. Like we relied too much on being optimistic just because, you know,
Yeah.
thinking that it would only be 2 weeks of a lockdown and then
Right.
look at what it turned into.
It was
And
manipulated.
that's the kind of exactly. So anything, you know, today that you were hearing that might have felt having that kind of doom and gloom vibe, it's really not about that. It's just to have the awareness so that if these things do happen on the world stage, that you feel like you could move along with it and you're not just getting, you know, pummeled over. And I very much feel like we're in it's really amazing actually how synchronistic the market is with our first conversation and with everything that I'm presenting. Like there was no
Yeah.
better time for us to come together. I think if we connected a month later, it
Literally
would have been
watching the
like we
market
missed out
dump
on
you.
so yeah, we would have missed out on so much juice. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's pretty historic day actually for the market, especially if it starts to correct because of what gold did. And
Yeah.
yeah, this is a sign with what's going on with JP Morgan. I very much think that bank term funding program that you brought up earlier with the Federal Reserve, it's starting to show the effects
Fucking
as
did
of
that shit
right
on
now.
purpose. Why would you not extend that? It's like, let's let April dip. Had to have
Yeah.
been like, you have to have the conversation. Should we extend the program? And
Yeah. And then there's an FOMC meeting at the very end of April. It'll actually be Chair Powell will speak on May 1st, and that's May Day, like Illuminati Day.
mhm.
So I am very yeah, I think that the
Love
way
them
that
some Mayday.
the 1941 Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus might be revealing a lot of what we will be going through over the next 30 to 40 days,
Mhm.
regardless of the Bitcoin halving, regardless of BlackRock ETF, Bitcoin ETF, all that's fucking something to distract you. You know,
Right.
this 2 weeks period that we're currently kind of halfway through and the following 3 weeks past this particular alignment, it tells me that it's synced so well. And even for the presidential election years, like I showed that data a little bit when you were talking earlier, the months of April and May are incredibly bearish during presidential election years. The only time that we saw that data deviate was when there was a black swan event.
Mhm.
So with the 2008 housing market crisis, subprime mortgage crisis, and with the dot-com bubble.
Mhm.
Those were the only two times. And
Yeah.
I don't think we're crashing this year. I think we're very much just getting a healthy pullback, recovery into Q4. And then the election time, we'll have to wait and see. But I would love to reconnect with you anytime we can,
Yeah,
because
for sure, man.
we just got the conversation started, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. Many
But
more.
for the sake of time today, I think we've made it to the 2.5 hour mark. So it's
I
been a
love talking to
marathon
you.
stream.
Yeah, I love talking to you because I really don't keep track of time. So I can't believe it's been, I mean, it makes sense. It's been 2.5 hours. Fuck, how do we
Yeah.
upload? Yeah, we'll figure this out. I'll get this to you, and we'll definitely do some more of this, man, for sure. For sure.
Beautiful. Well, let my audience know where they could find your work.
You guys can find me on youtube.com/the financial astrologer. My website is thefinancialastrologer.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Twitter under the name Cash Rising because you should be accumulating cash during this era. If you feel like you don't have a lot of money, and like gold and real estate or a Bitcoin, if you don't understand that you can buy a fractional amount, you're probably not in here. But if you feel like real estate or gold are too expensive, cash and silver are what you should be looking at. There are inflationary environments in the world right now. What they prefer and what they use is not, and there are Bitcoin in these areas. What they're using is cash. So that still gets you out of the banking system. It's actually better to have cash dollars in your pocket than to have it in the system because once that gets flipped over to CBDCs, if you want to buy a gasoline powered car on a magically created black market, because that's what happens when they make things illegal, right? In the 30s, alcohol suddenly became a black market because it was prohibited, right? If you want a gas vehicle because you don't want to be tracked or you want to buy something locally, cash is going to help you still in that environment. So to your point about how we're not quite paperless yet, it may help some of you to, well, all of us to hold on to some of that. And silver, because it is cheaper, actually makes it easier to split up and transact. And you don't want to be walking around with gold bars. They cost too much and they'll fuck you over with conversions. So that's, again, the practical side of how I look at things. Sama, practical astrology. If you type that into YouTube, I'll come up. And yeah, Cash Rising on Instagram and Twitter. That's where you can find me.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. Yeah, and everyone, if you want to check out my channel, it's just Waters Above. You'll find me. You'll find the aesthetic and then take it from there. I appreciate you, man. It was really beautiful to be able to spend this time with you and chat about life, chat about this experience that we both had and can't wait till the next one.
Likewise, man. And you have a interesting spelling of your name on social media, actually. So to call that out so people don't think you're somebody else or a scammer.
If you just put in youtube.com/@watersabove, just spelled plain and simple, you'll be able to find me. But on Twitter or x.com and Instagram, I just remove the O and write it out the same way. So also, if you go into any of my videos, like for instance, check out my last video. If you just go into the description, you'll find all the official links. So if you want to follow me on any of those other channels, you could check those out. And yeah, check out this last video I put out because it's about this eclipse and specifically about this upcoming Monday, this April 15th date that me and you talked a little bit about. And if there is an event that happens on the world stage, that'd be incredible because of that synchronicity. But yeah, man,
I'll check that out.
let's connect soon. Be great, maybe like a month from now, and then do a little recap.
Yeah, perfect. Let's kind of think about that, I guess, on like a month to month while we go through this bull market. And yeah, we'll keep in touch if we can do more or less. We'll catch up, man. Been a pleasure.
All right, brother. Much love. Take care.
Love, bro. Take care.